Hello guys, welcome to Percy Fiction. So in this video, we will see, what if Percy read the Naruto has the Phoenix Summoning Contract Chunin exam. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Crossing Flames. Percy Jackson had faced plenty of weird things in his 16 years of life. Being a demigod meant giant monsters, angry gods, and the occasional world-ending prophecy were practically part of his weekly routine. But even by his standards, fighting a flaming bird-woman hybrid in Central Park at midnight was pushing the boundaries of normal. "You cannot escape, son of the sea god." The creature, she'd called herself an Impusa, screeched as she hurled another fireball toward his head. Percy ducked, feeling the heat singe his hair as the projectile sailed past. "Lady, I was just trying to walk home. I didn't ask for this." His fingers tightened around Riptide, the celestial bronze sword gleaming in the moonlight. The park had emptied quickly when the monster appeared, which was typical. The mist usually made mortals see something mundane, like a gang fight or a gas leak, instead of mythological creatures trying to murder teenagers. The Impusa circled above him, her fiery wings casting dancing shadows across the grass. "The prophecy must not come to pass. You must be eliminated before the crossing." "What prophecy? What crossing?" Percy called out, genuinely confused. "Look, can we reschedule this? I have a math test tomorrow that I'm already going to fail without adding, fought a flaming chicken lady, to my list of excuses." The monster's eyes narrowed with rage. "Mock me at your peril, Perseus Jackson." She dive-bombed toward him, talons extended. Percy rolled sideways, swinging Riptide in a wide arc that caught the creature's wing. Golden ichor, the blood of immortals, splattered across the ground. The Impusa shrieked in pain but didn't disintegrate like most monsters did when struck with celestial bronze. Something was wrong. This monster was different, stronger, more persistent. Percy felt the familiar tug in his gut as he reached out toward the park's fountain. Water responded to his will, rising in a massive wave that crashed into the Impusa. Steam hissed as water met flame, and for a moment, Percy thought he had the upper hand. Then the monster began to chant in an ancient language that definitely wasn't Greek. The water around her started to boil and evaporate at an alarming rate. "Okay, that's new," Percy muttered, readying himself for another attack. The air between them suddenly rippled, like heat waves rising from asphalt on a summer day. The Impusa's chanting grew louder, more frantic. "The crossing begins. If I cannot stop you, then I shall direct your path," she cried triumphantly. The ripple in the air expanded, widening into what looked like a tear in reality itself. Through it, Percy could see flashes of trees, mountains, and a stone structure that resembled a massive gate. "What are you doing?" Percy demanded, backing away from the portal. The Impusa laughed. "Fulfilling my master's wishes, demigod. If you must cross worlds, then you shall do so blindly." She lunged at him, not to attack but to push. Y felt talons dig into his shoulders as he was shoved toward the rippling tear in space. He swung Riptide desperately, finally connecting with the monster's chest. The Impusa shrieked and disintegrated into golden dust, but her momentum had already carried them both forward. Percy felt himself falling through the tear in reality. There was a sensation of intense heat, followed by bone-deep cold. Then heat again, as if he were passing through layers of different atmospheres. Colors swirled around him, voices echoed in languages he didn't understand, and through it all, he could hear the beating of massive wings. Then darkness claimed him. Percy woke to the sound of birds and the feeling of hard earth beneath him. His head pounded like he'd gone 10 rounds with the Minotaur, and his mouth tasted like he'd been gargling sand. "Ugh!" he groaned, forcing his eyes open. Sunlight filtered through a canopy of leaves overhead. Trees surrounded him, not the manicured landscape of Central Park, but a dense forest that seemed wilder. More vibrant somehow. Pushing himself to a sitting position, Percy took stock of his situation. Riptide, in pen form, was still in his pocket. His backpack had somehow made the journey with him, though it looked slightly singed. His camp half-blood t-shirt was torn at the shoulder where the Impusa's talons had dug in. "Annabeth is going to kill me," he muttered. thinking of his girlfriend who had specifically told him to stay out of trouble while she was visiting her father in San Francisco. Standing up made the world spin momentarily, but Percy steadied himself against a tree trunk. In the distance, he could make out what looked like a path. First step, figure out where I am, he said to himself. Second step, find a way home before anyone notices I'm missing. As he started walking toward the path, Percy couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. It wasn't the usual monster as about to attack sensation he'd grown familiar with. This felt different, like the forest itself was evaluating him. The path was well worn, suggesting regular use. Percy followed it, hoping it would lead to civilization or at least someone who could tell him where on Earth he'd landed. After about 20 minutes of walking, the trees began to thin, and Percy caught his first glimpse of what lay ahead. His steps faltered, rising in the distance as an enormous wall surrounding what appeared to be a city. But it wasn't like any city Percy had ever seen. The architecture was unlike anything in America or even Greece. And most striking of all was the massive mountain that served as the city's backdrop, with 4 giant faces carved into its side, like a more serious version of Mount Rushmore. Definitely not in Kansas anymore, Percy murmured, adjusting his backpack. As he approached the city walls, he noticed a massive gate standing open with what looked like guards stationed at the entrance. People were coming and going, civilians carrying packages, children running and playing, what appeared to be merchants with carts of goods. What struck Percy immediately was their clothing. Nobody was wearing jeans and t-shirts. Instead, they wore sandals and outfits that reminded him vaguely of traditional Japanese clothing, though with practical modifications. Many wore headbands with a symbol that resembled a stylized leaf. Some of the people, particularly those with the headbands, moved with a fluid grace that reminded Percy of experienced fighters. A few were even jumping from rooftop to rooftop with inhuman agility. This just keeps getting weirder, Percy muttered. As he neared the gate, one of the guards, a man with spiky black hair and a scar across his nose, straightened and eyed him with suspicion. Halt, the guard Kae-D in what Percy was surprised to recognize as English. State your business in Konoha. Konoha. At least now he had a name for this place. I'm, just visiting, Percy replied, trying to sound Sewell despite his torn clothing and obvious disorientation. The guard's eyes narrowed. Visiting from where? You're not wearing a village headband, and I don't recognize your clothing. Percy's mind raced. He'd learned from experience that telling people, I'm a demigod who just fell through a portal from another world, rarely went over well. I'm from far away. I'm kind of lost, actually. It wasn't a lie, at least. The second guard, a woman with purple-tinted hair pulled back in a spiky ponytail, stepped forward. No weapons, she asked. Percy thought of Riptide in his pocket. No weapons, he lied. The woman's eyes seemed to pierce right through him. Chakra signature is unusual, she murmured to her companion. Then, louder, what's your name? Percy Jackson. Percy Jackson, the male guard repeated, as if the name sounded foreign on his tongue. That's not from any village I know. Look, Percy said, starting to feel frustrated, I don't want any trouble. I'm Zhu Qi, trying to figure out where I am and how to get home. The guards exchanged a glance. Wait here, the woman said, then disappeared in a blur of movement that left Percy blinking. Did she just? She'll be back, the male guard interrupted. In the meantime, you can wait inside the gate, but don't go any further into the village. Percy nodded, stepping into the shadow of the massive gate. Citizens passed by, some giving him curious looks, others ignoring him completely. A group of children ran past, laughing as they played some kind of game involving throwing small knife-like objects at targets. Wait, were those actual weapons? Percy watched in disbelief as a child no older than 8 hit a distant target with pinpoint accuracy. Before he could process this, a commotion near the road leading to the gate caught his attention. A group of 4 people was approaching, 3 who looked to be around his age and an older man with gravity-defying silver hair who wore a mask covering the lower half of his face. One of his eyes was also covered by his headband, giving him a mysterious appearance. What drew Percy's attention, however, was the bright blonde hair of one of the teenagers. A boy in an orange and black jumpsuit who was gesturing wildly as he spoke. Beside him walked a dark-haired boy with a perpetual scowl and a pink-haired girl who seemed to be alternating between SCO. LDING the blonde and casting adoring glances at the dark-haired boy. As they approached the gate, the silver-haired man's single visible eye locked onto Percy with an intensity that made him instinctively reach for Riptide in his pocket. "Yo, Azumo," the masked man called to the guard. "Is this the strange visitor Anko went to report about?" The guard, Azumo, apparently, nodded. "Just arrived. Says his name is Percy Jackson." The silver-haired man approached Percy with a casualness that somehow seemed more threatening than if he'd been openly hostile. "Well, Percy Jackson," he said, his voice friendly despite the calculating look in his eye, "welcome to Konoha. I'm Kakashi Hatake. These are my students. Naruto Uzumaki, Sasuke Uchiha, and Sakura Haruno. We've been asked to escort you to the Hokage." "Hokage," Percy repeated. The blonde boy, Naruto, looked at Percy with undisguised curiosity. "You don't know who the Hokage is. He's only the strongest ninja in the village and our leader." "Believe it." Naruto, indoor voice. Sakura chided, then offered Percy a polite if reserved smile. "You're not from around here, are you?" "That's one way of putting it," Percy admitted. The dark-haired boy, Sasuke, hadn't said a word, but his eyes hadn't left Percy either. There was something in his gaze that reminded Percy of Ares, a constant assessment of threat level and potential weaknesses. "Well then," Kakashi said cheerfully, though his eye remained watchful, "shall we?" As they led him into the village, Percy couldn't help but marvel at what he saw. The buildings were a mix of traditional and practical, with wires and pipes running alongside wooden structures. People jumped from rooftop to rooftop as casually as New Yorkers hailed taxis. Shops displayed weapons alongside groceries and clothing. "So," Naruto said, falling into step beside Percy, "where are you from?" "Your clothes are weird, Naruto," Sakura hissed. "You can't just say that to people." "What? They are weird. Look at that orange writing on his shirt. What does Camp Half-Blood mean anyway?" Percy tensed. He hadn't expected them to be able to read the English text on his shirt. "It's a summer camp," he said carefully. "Where I'm from, summer camp, like for training?" Naruto asked. "Something like that." Kakashi, who had been walking ahead, glanced back. "And where exactly is this camp, Percy?" "Long Island," Percy answered automatically, then wondered if that meant anything to them. "In New York," he added. From their blank expressions, he could tell it didn't ring any bells. "Is that in the land of lightning?" Sakura asked. "I don't recall any villages there with those names." Before Percy could answer, they arrived at a large, circular building with the character for fire emblazoned on its front. "The Hokage Tower," Kakashi explained. "Our mission report can wait, I suppose. Let's get you sorted out first." The inside of the building reminded Percy of a government office, albeit one where the employees could probably kill you with a paperclip. They were led up several flights of stairs to a door guarded by two more headband-wearing individuals. After a brief exchange, they were allowed into what was clearly an office. Behind a desk piled with paperwork sat an elderly man in official-looking robes and a red and white hat. His face was weathered with age and experience, but his eyes were sharp as they assessed Percy. "Lord Third," Kakashi greeted with a respectful nod. "This is the visitor Anko reported." The old man, the Hokage, Percy presumed, studied him for a long moment. "Thank you, Kakashi. Team 7, you're dismissed. Wait outside." Naruto looked like he wanted to protest, but a look from Kakashi silenced him. The three teenagers filed out, though not without curious backward glances at Percy. When the door closed, the Hokage gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Please, sit." Percy sat, trying not to show his nervousness. "I am Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage of Konohagakure," the old man said. "And you are?" "Percy Jackson, sir." "Percy Jackson," the Hokage repeated, as if testing the name. "Not a name from any shinobi village I know. Yet here you are, inside our walls, with no identification, no headband, strange clothing, and according to Anko, an unusual chakra signature." Percy blinked. "Chakra." The Hokage's eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes, chakra. The energy that flows through all living things and which shinobi harness for their techniques. Your signature is different. Strong, but untrained and flowy. In patterns our sensors haven't seen before. Percy had no idea what to say to that. He'd faced gods and monsters, but bureaucracy and interrogation were outside his comfort zone. The Hokage seemed to sense his discomfort. I am not accusing you of anything, young man. But you must understand, in times like these, a stranger appearing with unusual abilities raises questions. Times like these, Percy echoed. The Chunin exams begin in 3 days, the Hokage explained. Ninja from all the great villages and beyond are converging on Konoha. Security is tight, tensions are high. Percy decided honesty might be his best approach, at least partial honesty. Sir, I don't know anything about Chunin exams or chakra or shinobi. Where I'm from, those things don't exist. I was attacked, and somehow ended up in the forest outside your village. I'm just trying to figure out how to get home. The Hokage studied him for a long moment, then sighed. I have lived long enough to know when someone is telling the truth. Even if not the whole truth. He reached into his desk and pulled out a pipe, lighting it with practiced ease. So, Percy Jackson, what are you not telling me? Percy hesitated. How much could he safely reveal? Would they even believe him if he mentioned Greek gods and being a demigod? Where I'm from, I'm different, he said carefully. I can do things others can't. Mainly with water. A water nature affinity, the Hokage nodded, as if this confirmed something. But untrained in ninja arts. I wouldn't call it ninja arts, but yeah, I'm not trained like your shinobi. The Hokage puffed on his pipe thoughtfully. And this attack that brought you here. What can you tell me about that? Percy chose his words carefully. A woman, or something that looked like a woman with wings of fire. She said something about a prophecy and a crossing, then there was a tear in the air, like a doorway, and I fell through. For the first time, surprise registered on the Hokage's face. A summoning, he murmured, or something like it, summoning, a technique to call creatures from their realm to ours, the Hokage explained. But to summon a human, and from where, I wonder. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the village. Percy Jackson, I sense no deception in your words, strange as they are. But I also cannot ignore the timing of your arrival or the potential risk you represent. Percy tensed, ready to grab Riptide if needed. The Hokage turned back to him. I propose this. You will stay in Konoha, under supervision, until we can determine more about your situation and how to return you home. You will not be imprisoned, but neither will you be free to wander as you please. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than a dungeon. That sounds fair, Percy agreed. Good. The Hokage returned to his seat. Kakashi will be responsible for you. His team has just returned from a mission and will be preparing for the Chunin exams. But I'm sure they can accommodate one lost traveler. Before Percy could respond, the Hokage called out, Kakashi, you can come back in now. The door opened immediately, and the silver-haired man stepped in. Looking entirely unsurprised, as if he'd been listening the whole time. Lord Hokage, our visitor will be staying with us for a while. I'm assigning him to your supervision. Find him accommodations and help him acclimate. And perhaps see what he can do with that water affinity of his. Kakashi's visible eye crinkled in what might have been a smile beneath his mask. Of course, Lord Hokage. The Hokage turned back to Percy. Welcome to Konoha, Percy Jackson. I hope your stay is educational. Percy's first few days in Konoha were a blur of new experiences, cultural shocks, and the constant feeling of being watched. Kakashi had arranged a small apartment for him, sparsely furnished but comfortable enough. The Chunin had also provided him with some local currency, Ryo. They called it, and a basic change of clothes that wouldn't make him stand out quite so much. Team 7, as Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura were collectively called, took turns showing him around the village when they weren't training for the upcoming exams. Naruto was by far the most enthusiastic guide, dragging Percy to his favorite ramen shop, Ichiraku, within hours of his arrival. So you really don't have ramen where you come from? Naruto asked incredulously as they sat at the counter, steaming bowls in front of them. We have it, Percy clarified, picking up the chopsticks awkwardly. But it's not this elaborate. He gestured at the rich broth, perfectly cooked noodles, and various toppings. Naruto would live on ramen if we let him, Sakura explained from Percy's other side. It's practically his entire personality. Hey, that's not true. I'm also going to be Hokage someday. Believe it. Percy couldn't help but smile at Naruto's enthusiasm. The blonde ninja reminded him a bit of Leo Valdez, all energy and optimism covering what Percy suspected was a deeper pain. Sasuke, who sat at the end of their group, merely grunted and focused on his food. The dark-haired boy had said maybe 10 words total to Percy since they'd met. Don't mind Sasuke, Sakura whispered, though loudly enough that Sasuke definitely heard her. He's just intense. I've met intense before, Percy assured her, thinking of Nico D'Angelo's early days at camp. So these Chunin exams everyone's talking about. What exactly are they? Naruto practically bounced in his seat. It's how genin like us get promoted to Chunin rank. There are ninja from all the villages coming to compete. It's gonna be awesome. If we pass, Sakura added nervously. Of course we'll pass. We're Team 7. Percy glanced at Sasuke, who had finally looked up from his bowl. The exams are a chance to test your strength against others, the Uchiha said quietly. To see how far you still have to go. There was something in his tone that made Percy think Sasuke had specific people in mind that he wanted to measure himself against. After lunch, Sakura took over as guide, showing Percy the more practical parts of the village, the market, the hospital, the academy where young ninjas trained. So everyone here learns to fight from childhood? Percy asked as they watched a class of maybe 7-year-olds practicing throwing kunai. Not everyone becomes a ninja, Sakura explained. Some go into civilian trades. But yes, those who enter the academy start young. Percy thought about his own life, how he had known he was a demigod until he was 12, how quickly he'd had to adapt to a world of monsters and gods trying to kill him. I get that, he said softly. Sakura gave him a curious look but didn't press. As the afternoon waned, they made their way to the training grounds where Naruto and Sasuke were sparring under Kakashi's watchful eye. Percy was struck by their speed and the casual way they defied physics, running up trees, flipping through the air, even walking on water. They're using chakra to do that, right? Percy asked, recalling his conversation with the Hokage. Sakura nodded. Chakra is the energy within us that we can shape and control. With the right hand signs and concentration, we can perform all kinds of techniques. And you can walk on water too. Of course, Sakura said, then seemed to realize something. Oh, the Hokage mentioned you have a water affinity. Can you not walk on water where you come from? Percy smiled. Not exactly, but I have my own way of dealing with water. Before Sakura could ask what he meant, Kakashi called them over. Ah, Percy, good timing. I was just telling my cute little students that we should see what you can do. Percy tensed. He'd been waiting for this, the inevitable test of his abilities. Naruto bounded over, barely winded despite the intense sparring. Yeah, show us some cool water techniques. I don't know what I do counts as techniques in your terms, Percy hedged. Kakashi's eye crinkled. Why don't we find out? There's a stream just beyond those trees. Shall we? The small group made their way to the stream, which was about 10 feet wide and flowed with clear, cold water. Percy felt a familiar tug in his gut just standing near it, the call of his father's domain. So, Kakashi said casually, though his eye was sharp, show us what you can do with water, Percy Jackson. Percy took a deep breath. These people had been kind to him, but he still didn't know if he could trust them fully. On the other hand, if they wanted to harm him, they'd had plenty of opportunities. He stepped to the edge of the stream and concentrated. Immediately, the water responded to his will, rising in a column before him. With a gesture, Percy shaped it into a sphere, then a spiral, then sent it flowing in a circle around the group. Naruto's eyes were wide. Whoa, he's not using any hand signs. Sasuke had activated something in his eyes. They were now red with strange black markings. No chakra molding either, he said tersely. He's not shaping it with chakra at all. Kakashi lifted his headband, revealing a matching red eye that Percy hadn't seen before. Fascinating, the Chunin murmured. It's as if the water is responding directly to him, without any medium. Percy, feeling more confident, decided to show them a bit more. He stepped forward onto the stream and, instead of sinking, stood atop it as easily as if it were solid ground. Then, with a thought, he commanded the water to lift him, raising himself on a swirling column of liquid. "That's amazing," Sakura exclaimed. "It's like water nature chakra but purer somehow." Percy lowered himself back to the bank. "Where I come from, this is normal for me." "Well, not normal, but, you know what I mean." Kakashi was studying him with both eyes now, one black, one red. "Indeed, and this is all you can do with water?" Percy hesitated, then decided to show one more trick. He reached out his senses, feeling for groundwater, for moisture in the air, for the water in the plants around them. With a surge of concentration, he pulled, and dozens of small water droplets formed from seemingly nowhere, gathering into a swirling mist around them. The temperature dropped several degrees as Percy extracted the ambient moisture, condensing it into visible form. "He's creating water from nothing," Sasuke murmured, a hint of genuine surprise in his normally impassive voice. "Not from nothing," Percy corrected, releasing his hold and letting the mist dissipate. "It's already there, in the air, in the ground. I just call to it." Kakashi covered his red eye again. "Well," he said lightly, though Percy could hear the undercurrent of tension in his voice. "That was certainly educational. I think that's enough for today, don't you?" The walk back to the village was quieter than before. Percy could feel the shift in how they looked at him, not with hostility, but with a new wariness. He was an unknown quantity, a wild card in their carefully ordered world of ranks and techniques. That evening, alone in his temporary apartment, Percy tried to make sense of everything he'd learned. This world of ninjas and chakra was so different from his own, yet there were similarities too. The way they treated their abilities as both tools and art reminded him of how demigods viewed their powers. As he was about to turn in for the night, there was a knock at his door. Opening it, he found Kakashi leaning casually against the doorframe, orange book in hand. "Evening, Percy. Mind if I come in?" Percy stepped aside, letting the Chunin enter. "I've reported your abilities to the Hokage," Kakashi said without preamble, tucking his book away. He's intrigued. "Is that good or bad?" Kakashi's eye crinkled. "Neither. Both. In our world, unusual abilities attract attention, some wanted, some not." Percy felt a chill. Had nothing to do with his water powers. "You think I'm in danger?" "I think," Kakashi said carefully, "that the Chunin exams bring many eyes to Konoha, and not all of them friendly. A stranger with abilities outside our understanding of chakra would naturally draw interest." "I don't want to cause trouble for your village," Percy said honestly. "I just want to find a way home." Kakashi nodded. "The Hokage understands that, which is why he suggested you might benefit from spending time in our archives while you're here. If your crossing, as you called it, has happened before, there might be records." Hope flickered in Percy's chest. "You think I could find a way back?" "It's possible. The archives are vast, and many scrolls date back to the founding of the village and before." Percy ran a hand through his hair. "There's just one problem. I'm not great with reading." He wasn't about to explain his dyslexia to Kakashi. "And I doubt I can read your language anyway." "Ah, about that," Kakashi said. "We've noticed something curious. Despite your obvious foreign origin, you speak our language perfectly, and Naruto mentioned you could read the text on your shirt." Percy blinked, suddenly realizing what Kakashi meant. Since arriving, he'd understood everyone perfectly, and they him. It hadn't even occurred to him to question it. "That doesn't make sense," he admitted. "Unless," Kakashi suggested, "whatever brought you here also ensured you could communicate. Which suggests this crossing was not entirely accidental." The thought sent another chill through Percy. If his arrival wasn't an accident, what was he doing here? And who, or what, had arranged it? "The archives are open to you starting tomorrow," Kakashi continued, moving toward the door. "Sakura has volunteered to help you. She's quite the scholar." "Thank you," Percy said, his mind still reeling from the implications of Kakashi's words. At the door, the Chunin paused. "One more thing, Percy. The Hokage has decided that, given your unique situation, you should observe the Chunin exams. It might help you understand our world better while you're here. Observe, not participate, right? The last thing Percy needed was to get drawn into some ninja competition. Kakashi's eye crinkled in what Percy was learning might be a smile. Not officially, no, but keep an open mind. Good night, Percy Jackson. After Kakashi left, Percy sat on his bed, twirling Riptide in pen form between his fingers. The familiar weight was comforting in this unfamiliar world. What are you up to, Impusa? He murmured to the empty room. What prophecy were you talking about? No answer came, of course, but Percy couldn't shake the feeling that he'd been sent here for a reason, and that his quest, whatever it was just beginning. The Konoha Ninja Academy library was smaller than Percy had expected, but what it lacked in size, it made up for in the age and variety of its contents. Scrolls of var. Ying sizes and conditions lined the shelves, some looking as ancient as the Oracle's mummified remains at Camp Half-Blood. Sakura moved through the stacks with practiced ease, pulling scrolls and explaining their organization system. The oldest records are kept in the secure archives beneath the Hokage Tower, but we should start with these general texts on summoning and dimensional theory. Percy raised an eyebrow. Dimensional theory? You guys have that? Of course, Sakura said, setting a scroll on the table. The summoning contracts allow ninjas to call creatures from other planes of existence. There's been extensive research on the nature of these connections. Percy thought of the gods and how they existed simultaneously in multiple places. Maybe this world wasn't so different from his after all. So we're looking for records of humans being summoned? He asked. Sakura nodded, unrolling a scroll carefully. Or traveling between dimensions without a contract. It's rare, but there are legends. They settled into a rhythm, with Sakura skimming texts and explaining relevant passages to Percy. Despite his initial concerns about reading, Percy found that he could indeed understand the written language here. Though the complex technical terms gave him headaches reminiscent of his dyslexia back home. After several hours, they'd found mentions of various summoning animals, toads, snakes, slugs, dogs, and more, but nothing about humans crossing dimensions. Maybe we need to look at it from another angle, Percy suggested, rubbing his temples. Instead of summoning, what about prophecies? The Impusa mentioned a prophecy before she pushed me through the portal. Sakura looked up, intrigued. Prophecies aren't common in our world, but there are some. The Great Toad, sage of Mount Myoboku, is said to have the gift of prophecy. Great Toad Sage, Percy repeated. Like, an actual giant toad that tells the future. Yes, he's the oldest and wisest of the toad summons. Jiraiya-sama, one of the legendary Sannin, has a contract with the toads. Percy was about to ask who Jiraiya was when a commotion outside the library caught their attention. They stepped out to find a group of unfamiliar ninjas in the academy courtyard. Their headbands bore an hourglass symbol instead of Konoha's leaf. Sand ninjas, Sakura explained quietly. Here for the Chunin exams. Sand ninjas were gathered around three individuals who stood out even among their own group. One was a young woman with blonde hair tied in 4 spiky ponytails, carrying what looked like a giant folded fan on her back. Beside her stood a boy in a black, cat-like outfit with purple face paint and something wrapped in bandages strapped to his back. But it was the third member who drew Percy's attention, a short, red-haired boy with dark-rimmed eyes and an enormous gourd on his back. Even from a distance, Percy could feel something off about him, a kind of pressure in the air that reminded him of standing near a powerful monster or an angry god. Who's the redhead? Percy whispered. Sakura tensed visibly. Gaara of the desert. We've heard stories. Before she could elaborate, the red-haired boy's head snapped in their direction, his pale eyes locking with Percy's. A chill ran down Percy's spine as Gaara stared at him with a mixture of confusion and, was that recognition? The moment was broken when another group entered the courtyard. Naruto, Sasuke, and a boy Percy hadn't met with long brown hair and pale, pupil-less eyes. Naruto spotted them and waved enthusiastically. Sakura, Percy, come meet Bushy Brows and his team. As they approached, Percy noticed another boy with the group, dressed in a green jumpsuit with orange leg warmers, sporting a bowl cut and the thickest eyebrows Percy had ever seen. Percy, this is Rock Lee, Neji Hyuga, and their teammate Tenten, Naruto introduced, pointing to each in turn. Guys, this is Percy. He's, visiting. Rock Lee struck an enthusiastic pose. It is a pleasure to meet any friend of Naruto's. May your youth burn brightly. Percy blinked, not quite sure how to respond to that. Thanks. You too. Neji Hyuga studied Percy with those strange, pupil-less eyes. You have an unusual chakra flow, he stated matter-of-factly. It's not like anything I've seen before. You can see chakra? Percy asked, genuinely curious. The Byakugan is the Kekkei Genkai of the Hyuga clan, Sakura explained. It allows them to see chakra pathways and much more. Percy was starting to understand that this world had its own version of demigod abilities, bloodline traits that gave certain families special powers. Between Neji's all-seeing eyes and whatever was going on with Sasuke's red eyes from yesterday, he was beginning to feel less out of place with his water powers. So you're competing in the exams too? Percy asked, trying to shift the focus away from his unusual chakra. Tenten nodded, twirling a kunai between her fingers with practiced ease. Our team qualified last year, but our sensei, Guy, thought we should wait. This time, we're definitely passing. Guy Sensei is the embodiment of youthful energy and wisdom. Lee proclaimed, flames practically visible in his eyes. With his guidance, we shall triumph. Percy caught Sasuke rolling his eyes and suppressed a smile. The dynamic between these ninja teens wasn't so different from Camp Half-Blood after all. Their conversation was interrupted by a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The Sand Ninja team, led by the red-haired boy Gaara, was approaching them. Uchiha Sasuke, Gaara said, his voice soft yet somehow threatening. His eyes shifted to Percy. And you, what are you? Percy tensed, hand instinctively moving toward his pocket where Riptide waited. Excuse me, your chakra, Gaara continued, unblinking. It smells like the ocean. Like salt and power. The gourd on his back seemed to shift slightly, as if responding to Gaara's interest. Mother finds it confusing. Naruto stepped forward protectively. Hey, leave him alone, you weirdo. The blonde girl with the fan quickly intervened. Gaara, we should go. We're Suppo, said to meet Baki-sensei about registration. For a tense moment, Gaara continued to stare at Percy, and Percy stared right back. There was something inside the Sand Ninja, something that reminded Percy of the raw primal energy he'd felt from ancient monsters. Finally, Gaara turned away. We will meet again, he said, not looking back as his siblings hurried after him. What was that about? Percy asked once they'd gone. Gaara of the desert, Neji said quietly. His chakra is disturbing. As is yours, though in a different way. Mine isn't disturbing, Percy protested. It's just different. Perhaps, Neji conceded. But difference can be dangerous in the ninja world. With that cryptic statement, Neji excused himself, mentioning training commitments. Tenten followed, Dragon, G and enthusiastic Lee who was insisting on challenging Sasuke to a spar. Once they were alone again, Naruto turned to Percy with unusually serious eyes. Be careful around that Gaara guy. There's something really off about him. Percy nodded, appreciating the warning. Trust me, I've met his type before. Really? Sakura asked, surprised. There are people like Gaara where you come from. Percy thought of Nico's early anger, of Luke's betrayal, of Ethan Nakamura's resentment, people whose pain had twisted them. Not exactly the same, but yeah. People carrying darkness inside them. Sasuke, who had been silent during the exchange, gave Percy a sharp look before turning away. We should continue preparing for the exams. Kakashi will be expecting us at the training grounds. Oh right, Naruto exclaimed. We're supposed to work on chakra control today. Percy, you should come watch. Percy glanced at Sakura, who gave him an apologetic smile. We can continue our research tomorrow. Tea might be good for you to see more ninja techniques anyway. Percy agreed, and they headed toward the training grounds, leaving the library and its ancient scrolls behind for now. As they walked, RCY couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Twice he turned suddenly, but saw nothing suspicious, just the bustling activity of a village preparing for a major event. The training ground was a cleared area in the forest with several wooden posts, a small stream which Percy appreciated and enough open space for sparring. Kakashi was already there, casually leaning against a tree reading his orange book. "Ah, my cute little students," he greeted without looking up. "And Percy. Good. I was hoping you'd join us today." Naruto immediately launched into an account of their encounter with Gaara, which Kakashi listened to with apparent disinterest that Percy suspected was carefully cultivated. "Gaara of the desert, Kakashi finally said, tucking his book away. "Well, the Chunin exams always bring interesting competitors. All the more reason to ensure you three are prepared." The training session that followed was eye-opening for Percy. He watched as Team 7 practiced walking up trees and across water, manipulating their chakra with increasing control. Naruto struggled the most, often falling into the stream with a splash and a curse, while Sakura showed perfect precision. Sasuke, Percy noted, was technically proficient but seemed to use more energy than necessary, as if brute-forcing his way through the exercises. "Your turn, Percy," Kakashi called after a while. "Show us how you walk on water again." Percy stepped toward the stream, aware of Team 7's curious eyes on him. Unlike their careful chakra control, his ability was instinctive, a birthright from Poseidon. He stepped onto the water's surface, and it immediately solidified beneath his feet, supporting him as easily as land. "No hand signs, no visible chakra molding," Kakashi observed. "Just pure affinity. Fascinating. Can you teach me to do it like that?" Naruto asked eagerly, pulling himself out of the stream after another failed attempt. Percy shook his head. "It's not something I learned. It's just part of me. Like a Kekkei Genkai," Sasuke muttered, activating his red eyes. "Sharingan," Percy had learned they were called. "Maybe," Percy conceded, though he knew it wasn't quite the same as their bloodline abilities. His powers came from being a demigod, a condition that didn't seem to exist in this world. As the afternoon wore on, Percy found himself joining in some of the exercises, particularly those involving water manipulation. While he couldn't create the precise jutsu that Kakashi demonstrated, his natural control over water allowed him to mimic some of their effects. By the time the sun began to set, even Percy was tired from the constant use of his abilities. Kakashi dismissed Team 7, reminding them that the written portion of the Chunin exams would begin the day after tomorrow. "Percy," Kakashi added as the others left, a word. Percy stayed behind, wondering what the Chunin wanted. "The Hokage is interested in your progress," Kakashi said once they were alone. "Both in the archives and with your integration." "We didn't find much in the archives today," Percy admitted. "But we're just getting started." Kakashi nodded. "These things take time. But that's not all I wanted to discuss." He paused, his visible eye studying Percy carefully. "Your encounter with Gaara today concerns me." Percy stiffened. "Why? I didn't do anything to provoke him." "No, but you caught his interest, which few managed to do without ending up dead." Kakashi's bluntness was jarring. "Gaara of the desert has a reputation. A violent one. What's his deal?" Percy asked. "There's something not right about him." Kakashi was silent for a moment. "Let's just say Gaara carries a burden that few could understand. It's made him dangerous, unstable. The fact that he specifically noticed you suggests your unique chakra, or whatever you call your power, resonated with him somehow." Percy thought of the strange sensation he'd felt from Gaara, that raw, monstrous energy. He mentioned a mother. Does that mean something specific here? A shadow passed over Kakashi's visible eye. "That is not my story to tell. Just be cautious around him, and around the other foreign ninjas arriving for the exams. Not everyone is as welcoming as Konoha." With that cryptic warning, Kakashi disappeared in a swirl of leaves, leaving Percy alone in the training ground as dusk settled over the village. On his walk back to his temporary apartment, Percy's mind was full of the day's events. The strange encounter with Gaara, the training with Team 7, the continuing mystery of how he'd ended up in this world, and more importantly, how he might get home. He was so lost in thought that he almost missed the flutter of movement in his peripheral vision. Instinctively, he ducked, feeling something whistle past where his head had been a moment before. Rolling to his feet, Percy pulled Riptide from his pocket but didn't uncap it yet. His eyes scanned the darkening street, searching for his attacker. "Good reflexes," a voice called from the shadows. A figure stepped forward, a man Percy didn't recognize, wearing a bandana-style headband with a musical note symbol. For someone who isn't a ninja. Percy tensed, ready to uncap Riptide if the man made another move. Who are you? The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Just a curious observer. We've heard interesting rumors about Konoha's unusual guest. Percy repeated, glancing around for others. My village has a vested interest in unique abilities. The man circled Percy slowly, assessingly. They say you control water without hand signs. Without chakra molding. How is that possible, I wonder? Percy remained silent, turning to keep the man in view. He'd dealt with enough monsters and enemies to recognize the predatory gleam in the ninja's eyes. Not talkative. That's fine. My master doesn't need you to speak to study your abilities. The man's hands began forming rapid signs. Consider this a pre-exam evaluation. Before Percy could respond, the ground beneath his feet rippled like water. He jumped back instinctively, uncapping Riptide in the same motion. The bronze blade sprang to full size, its faint glow illuminating the now dark street. The ninja's eyes widened at the sight of the sword appearing from nowhere. Interesting weapon, he murmured. Another ability worth investigating. I'm not interested in being investigated, Percy said firmly, falling into a fighting stance. So back off before this gets messy. The ninja laughed, threatening a shinobi of the Sound Village. Bold. His hands flashed through another series of signs, and suddenly the air was filled with a high-pitched noise that made Percy's ears ring painfully. He staggered, fighting to maintain his balance as the sound disrupted his equilibrium. Through watering eyes, Percy saw the ninja preparing another attack. He needed water, but the nearest source was too far away to call quickly. Or was it? Percy reached out with his senses, feeling for moisture. There, in the plants lining the street, in the air itself, and in the ninja's own body. Percy had never tried to manipulate the water in someone else's blood before. And the thought made him queasy, but he didn't need to go that far. Instead, he pulled at the ambient moisture in the air, rapidly condensing it into a shield of water before him just as the sound ninja released a blast of concentrated sound waves. The water absorbed some of the impact, though Percy still felt the jarring force of the attack. Using the momentary cover, Percy charged forward, Riptide cutting through the lingering sound waves. The sound ninja's eyes widened in surprise at Percy's speed, not as fast as a trained shinobi, perhaps, but fast enough with the element of surprise. The ninja leapt backward, his hands already forming new signs, when a voice cut through the night. That's enough. Both Percy and the sound ninja froze, turning toward the new arrival. Kakashi stood on a nearby rooftop, his posture casual but his intent clear. Attacking a guest of Konoha is poor form, Kakashi said mildly. Especially before the exams have even begun. The sound ninja straightened, forcing a smile. Just a friendly spar, Hataki-san. Testing the waters, so to speak. Of course, Kakashi replied, his voice deceptively light. But perhaps save your energy for the official competitions. A tense moment passed before the sound ninja bowed slightly. As you wish. Until the exams, then. With one last, calculating look at Percy, he disappeared in a blur of movement. Percy capped Riptide, his heart still racing from the brief confrontation. Friend of yours? He asked Kakashi. The Chunin jumped down from the rooftop, landing silently beside Percy. Hardly. The Sound Village is new, secretive, and concerning. He seemed very interested in how my abilities work. I'm not surprised. Your power doesn't follow the rules of our world. That makes you a curiosity at best, a target at worst. Kakashi studied Percy thoughtfully. That sword is interesting too. It appeared from nowhere. Percy hesitated, then pulled out Riptide in pen form. It's disguised. Easier to carry around than a full sword. A transformation jutsu of some kind, Kakashi mused. But again, without hand signs or visible chakra use. He shook his head. You're a walking mystery, Percy Jackson. Story of my life, Percy muttered. Kakashi fell into step beside him as they continued toward Percy's apartment. I think it's time we discussed your participation in the Chunin exams more seriously. Percy stopped short. Participation? You said I'd be observing. Plans change. After your encounter with Gaara and now this sound ninja, it's clear that staying on the sidelines won't be an option. Kakashi's eye crinkled. Besides, You might learn something useful about your situation. The exams have a way of revealing hidden truths. Percy ran a hand through his hair in frustration. I'm not a ninja. I don't know your techniques or rules. No, Kakashi agreed, but you have your own skills. And more importantly, you have something the Hokage values. What's that? A fresh perspective. An outsider's view. Kakashi resumed walking. Don't worry, we wouldn't throw you into the standard team competitions. But there's a role you old play that might benefit both you and Konoha. What kind of role? We'll discuss it tomorrow with the Hokage. For now, Kakashi's voice turned serious. I suggest you keep that sword handy. And perhaps consider where the nearest water sources are at all times. With that ominous advice, Kakashi departed in another swirl of leaves, leaving Percy to complete his journey alone, more alert than before for any signs of threat. The Konoha archives, located deep beneath the Hokage Tower, were a stark contrast to the Academy Library. Where the library had been small but orderly, the archives were vast and labyrinthine. With scrolls and books stacked in towering shelves that seemed to go on forever in the dim light. Most genin aren't allowed down here, Sakura whispered as an elderly archivist led them through the stacks. You must have really impressed the Hokage. Percy doubted that was the reason. After last night's attack and Kakashi's cryptic comments about his participation in the exams, he suspected the Hokage wanted to keep him busy and supervised. The archivist, a wizened old woman named Chio, brought them to a section marked with faded symbols. These are the scrolls on dimensional theory and unusual summoning records, she explained in a creaky voice. Some date back to the Warring States period, before the hidden villages were founded. Percy thanked her, she left them with a stern warning not to damage any of the ancient texts. So, Sakura said once they were alone, Naruto told me about your encounter with the sound ninja last night. Are you all right? Percy nodded. I've had worse, but it was educational. The sound village is new, Sakura said, carefully unrolling a scroll. They first appeared just a few months ago, and not much is known about them. Your friend Kakashi seemed concerned about them. Kakashi-sensei is concerned about most things, even if he pretends not to be. Sakura smiled slightly. It's part of what makes him a good Chunin. They settled into their research, with Sakura translating the more complex passages for Percy. Hours passed with little progress. Most of the scrolls dealt with theoretical aspects of summoning that went over Percy's head, or historical accounts of unusual animal summons. Just as Percy was about to suggest a break, Sakura made an excited sound. Percy, look at this. She had penned an ancient scroll with faded ink and crumbling edges. The text was in an older form of writing, but at the center was an illustration that made Percy's breath catch. It depicted a massive bird wreathed in flames, with wings spread wide and a crest of fire atop its head. Around it were smaller figures, humans by the look of them, with flames dancing around their hands. As that, Percy began. A phoenix, Sakura confirmed, her finger tracing the faded image carefully. The text here mentions a contract that was thought lost centuries ago. The Phoenix summoning contract. Percy studied the image, feeling a strange resonance with the majestic fire bird. It reminded him of the Impusa who had attacked him, her fiery wings, her cryptic words about a prophecy and a crossing. What does it say about the contract? Sakura frowned in concentration as she read. It says the Phoenix clan was one of the first summons to form a contract with humans, even before the Sage of Six Paths, time. But unlike other summons, they were extremely selective about their summoners. She continued reading. There's something here about those with the blood of worlds beyond, being particularly suited to the Phoenix contract. Blood of worlds beyond, Percy repeated. That could mean someone like me, from another world. Possibly, Sakura agreed. But it says the contract was lost during a great battle, when its last summoner sacrificed himself to save his village from something called the nine-tailed demon fox. Percy noticed how Sakura's voice wavered slightly at the mention of the nine-tailed fox. That means something to you, he observed. She hesitated. The Nine Tails attacked Konoha 12 years ago. It nearly destroyed the village before the fourth Hokage defeated it, sacrificing his life in the process. And this Phoenix summoner fought the same creature. When was that? According to this, nearly 100 years ago, in a village that no longer exists. Sakura continued scanning the text. It says the Phoenix contract was believed destroyed in the battle, but some scholars theorized it might have been transported to a different dimension for safekeeping. Percy's mind raced. So there's a connection between this Phoenix contract, dimensional travel, and me somehow ending up here. It's possible, Sakura admitted. But this is all just legend and theory. There's no concrete proof the Phoenix contract ever truly existed. Some historians believe it was just a metaphor for a particularly powerful fire-style jutsu. Before Percy could respond, he felt a strange warmth in his pocket, where Riptide was stored. Pulling out the pen, he was startled to find it was glowing faintly with an orange light, unlike its usual bronze gleam. "What's happening to your weapon?" Sakura asked, eyes wide. "I don't know." Percy uncapped Riptide, and the pen transformed into his sword, but something was different. Along the celestial bronze blade, faint patterns like flames seemed to ripple, appearing and disappearing as the light caught them. "That's not normal, is it?" Sakura whispered. Percy shook his head slowly. "No, it's never done this before." The sword seemed to pull in his hand, as if drawn toward something. Percy let it guide him, taking a step deeper into the archives. The pulling sensation grew stronger. "I think it's trying to show us something," he murmured. Sakura gathered the scroll and followed as Percy let Riptide lead him through the maze-like stacks. They passed sections on ancient battles, clan histories, and forbidden techniques, going deeper into the archives than Sakura had ever been. Finally, they reached a small, dusty alcove that seemed untouched for decades. Riptide's glow intensified, illuminating a stone shelf, with a single wooden box pushed far into the back corner. "What is that?" Sakura asked as Percy reached for the box. It was simple but elegant, made of dark wood with no visible lock or seal. As Percy's fingers touched it, he felt a spark, like static electricity but warmer, more alive. Carefully, he lifted the lid. Inside, resting on faded red silk, was a scroll unlike any they had seen so far. It was bound with golden cord and sealed with wax that bore the image of a bird in flight. "As that?" Sakura breathed. Percy nodded, somehow certain. "The Phoenix summoning contract," as if responding to his words. The scroll pulsed with inner light, and the wax seal began to glow. Percy felt a tugging sensation in his gut, similar to when he used his water powers but different, warmer, more volatile. "Should we take it to the Hokage?" Sakura asked, looking uncertain. Percy hesitated. Part of him knew the sensible answer was yes. This was clearly something significant that the village leaders should know about. But another part, the instinct that had kept him alive through countless quests and battles, told him this discovery was meant for him specifically. "I think," Percy began, but was cut off by a commotion from the archives entrance. Raised voices echoed through the stacks, including one he recognized as Kakashi's. "We need to go," Sakura said urgently. "Something's happening." Percy quickly replaced the box's lid and tucked it under his arm. "We'll bring this with us." They retraced their steps through the archives, Riptide's glow fading back to normal as they moved away from the alcove. As they approached the entrance, they found Kakashi in conversation with another Chunin, a man with a senbon needle in his mouth and a bandana covering his head. "Percy, Sakura," Kakashi greeted them, his casual tone belied by the tension in his stance. "I hope your research was productive. We need to cut it short, however." "What's happened?" Sakura asked. "There's been an incident," Kakashi replied carefully. "A team from the Rain Village was attacked last night. They've withdrawn from the exams." "Attacked by whom?" Percy asked, adjusting his grip on the wooden box. Kakashi's eye flicked to the box briefly before returning to Percy's face. "That's the concerning part. They claim it was a water user who moved, like no ninja they'd ever seen." Percy felt a chill. "They think it was me." "Some do," the other Chunin said. "I'm Genma Shiranui, by the way. Special Chunin and one of the exam proctors." "It wasn't Percy," Sakura said firmly. "He was in his apartment last night after the incident with the sound ninja." "Was he?" Genma asked mildly. "Can anyone confirm that?" Percy realized with a sinking feeling that he couldn't prove where he'd been. After Kakashi had left him, he'd gone straight to his apartment and slept, alone, with no witnesses. "The Hokage has called a meeting," Kakashi said. He wants you there, Percy. And, he nodded toward the box. Whatever you've found in the archives. As they left the archives, Percy couldn't shake the feeling that things were accelerating toward some inevitable confrontation. The discovery of the Phoenix contract. The accusation of attacking the Rain Ninjas. Kakashi's talk of him participating in the exams. It all seemed connected, threads of a tapestry he couldn't yet see clearly. Ing was certain. Whatever reason the Impusa had for sending him to this world, he was now firmly entangled in its conflicts and mysteries. And if his past quests were anything to go by, the danger was only just beginning. The Hokage's office was more crowded than during Percy's first visit. In addition to the third Hokage himself, seated behind his desk with a grave expression, there were several Chunin Percy recognized, Kakashi, Genma, and a few others he'd seen around the village. There were also 3 unfamiliar ninjas with the same raindrop symbol on their headbands that Percy assumed belonged to the attacked team. "Ah, Percy Jackson," the Hokage said as Percy entered with Sakura and the wooden box. "And Miss Haruno, thank you for joining us." The Rain Ninjas turned to look at Percy, and he immediately felt the hostility in their gazes. One of them, a tall, thin man with an umbrella strapped to his back, pointed accusingly. "That's him. That's the one who attacked us." Percy tensed. "I didn't attack anyone. I was in my apartment all night." "Lies." Another Rain Ninja spat. "We saw you manipulating water without hand signs, just as reported." The Hokage raised a hand for silence. "These are serious accusations, but let us proceed calmly." He turned to Percy. "Can anyone vouch for your whereabouts after Kakashi left you last evening?" Percy shook his head reluctantly. "No, sir. I went straight to my apartment and stayed there until morning." One of the Rain Ninjas made a triumphant sound, but the Hokage silenced him with a look. "Before we continue with these allegations, I'm curious about what you've found in the archives." The Hokage nodded toward the box Percy still carried. Kakashi mentioned a discovery. Percy placed the wooden box on the desk and carefully opened it, revealing the Phoenix contract scroll. A murmur ran through the assembled Chunin, and even the Rain Ninjas fell silent. "The Phoenix summoning contract," the Hokage breathed, leaning forward to examine it without touching. "Believed lost for generations. How did you find it?" Percy explained how his sword had led them to it, deliberately avoiding any mention of the scroll they'd found describing the contract first. Something told him to keep that detail to himself for now. "Interesting," the Hokage murmured. "And your sword glowed, you say?" Percy nodded, pulling out Riptide in pen form. When he uncapped it this time, the flame-like patterns were still visible along the blade, though fainter than in the archives. The Hokage studied the sword with keen interest. "Remarkable. A weapon from another world. Responding to an artifact of our own." He looked up at Percy. "Do you know why?" "No, sir," Percy admitted. "But the Impusa who sent me here mentioned a prophecy and something called the Crossing. I think finding this contract might be related to why I'm here." The Rain Ninjas, momentarily forgotten during the revelation of the Phoenix contract, made their presence known again. "This is all very fascinating," their leader said coldly, "but it doesn't change the fact that this foreigner attacked my team unprovoked." The Hokage turned his attention back to the Rain Ninjas. "You claim it was Percy Jackson who attacked you. Describe exactly what you saw." The first Rain Ninja stepped forward. "We were camped in the forest outside the village, preparing for the exams. Shortly after midnight, we were ambushed. The attacker manipulated water with unprecedented skill, without hand signs or visible chakra use. He matched this one's description perfectly." "And did this attacker speak? Use any weapons?" the Hokage pressed. The Rain Ninjas exchanged glances. "No," the second one admitted. "He was silent throughout, and used no weapons, only water techniques." Percy looked at Kakashi, who had been silently observing the proceedings. "Last night, when that sound ninja attacked me, I used Riptide. And I definitely wasn't silent." Kakashi nodded. "That's true." Percy defended himself with his sword and spoke several times during the confrontation I witnessed. The Hokage steepled his fingers. "It seems we have a mystery on our hands. Someone who can use water techniques similar to Percy's abilities, but who fights silently and without weapons." He fixed the Rain Ninjas with a penetrating gaze. "Did you get a clear look at the attacker's face?" The Rain Ninjas shifted uncomfortably. It was dark, the third one finally said. And there was mist everywhere. We assumed it was him because of the water manipulation, but you can not positively identify Percy Jackson as your attacker, the Hokage finished firmly. Which means these accusations are, at present, unfounded. The Rain Ninja leader began to protest, but the Hokage cut him off with a raised hand. I understand your frustration, but without clear evidence, I cannot take action against a guest of Konoha. However, he added as the Rain Ninjas bristled, I assure you this matter will be fully investigated. In the meantime, you are welcome to withdraw from the exams, or to continue with enhanced security for your team. After a tense moment, the Rain leader bowed stiffly. We will continue with the exams, Lord Hokage. But we request that he be kept away from the competitors. Actually, Kakashi interjected smoothly, the Hokage and I were discussing Percy's potential role in the exams. Not as a competitor, but as an observer with a specific task. The Hokage nodded. Indeed, given the discovery of the Phoenix contract and the unusual nature of the attack on the Rain team, I believe Percy's unique perspective might be valuable during the exams. The Rain Ninjas looked like they wanted to object further, but a subtle gesture from the Hokage had them escorted from the office by one of the other Chunin. Once they were gone, the Hokage turned his full attention to Percy, Sakura, and Kakashi. Now, let us discuss this contract and what it might mean for your presence here. Percy Jackson. Percy explained in more detail what they had learned from the scroll in the archives, about the Phoenix clan's selectivity, the reference to Blood of Worlds Beyond, and the last known summoner's battle with the nine-tailed fox. The Hokage listened intently, occasionally glancing at the contract still resting in its box. When Percy finished, he sat back with a thoughtful expression. The timing is significant, he said finally. The Chunin exams beginning just as you arrive and discover this ancient contract. I do not believe in coincidences of this magnitude. Neither do I, Percy agreed. In my experience, when prophecies are involved, nothing happens by chance. Which brings us to your role in the exams, Kakashi said. The Hokage and I have discussed having you serve as a special observer, officially to provide an outsider's perspective on our shinobi system, but also to keep you close to the proceedings where we can ensure your safety. And where I can keep an eye out for whoever is impersonating me, Percy added, understanding the unstated implication. The Hokage nodded. Precisely. The Chunin exams attract all manner of individuals, some with benign intentions, others less so. If someone is deliberately framing you for attacks, we need to know why. What about the Phoenix contract? Sakura asked, speaking for the first time since they'd entered the office. Should Percy try to sign it? The room fell silent. Percy looked at the ancient scroll, feeling the strange warmth it seemed to emanate even through the box. Part of him was drawn to it, curious about what abilities a contract with mythical fire birds might grant him. But another part, the part that had learned caution through bitter experience, hesitated. Summoning contracts are not entered into lightly, the Hokage said gravely. Once signed, they create a binding link between summoner and summons. It is a lifetime commitment. And I don't even know if I'll be in this world long-term, Percy pointed out. If I find a way home. Indeed, the Hokage agreed. Yet the contract's appearance now, and your sword's reaction to it, suggests a connection that transcends mere chance. Kakashi stepped forward. Perhaps we're approaching this backward. Instead of Percy signing the contract, what if the contract itself holds clues about why he's here and how he might return home? The Hokage considered this an interesting thought. The Phoenix clan is one of the oldest known summons, predating even the founding of the hidden villages. Their wisdom and knowledge of dimensional boundaries might prove valuable. So I should open the contract, but not necessarily sign it yet. Percy clarified. For now, yes, the Hokage decided. Examine it, learn what you can. The decision to sign can wait until we have more information. With careful hands, the Hokage lifted the scroll from its box and broke the wax seal. As the golden cord unwound, a warm breeze seemed to stir in the office, carrying the faint scent of cinnamon and wood smoke. The Hokage unrolled the scroll on his desk, revealing lines of elegant calligraphy interspersed with what looked like hand prints in dried blood. the signatures of previous summoners, Percy realized. Fascinating, the Hokage murmured, tracing the text with his finger without touching it. The contract is written in an ancient dialect, but the terms are clear. Those who sign in blood shall be granted the friendship and aid of the Phoenix clan, to call upon in times of need, to learn from in times of peace, to stand beside in times of battle. As Percy leaned closer to examine the contract, a section near the bottom caught his eye, text that seemed to shimmer and change as he looked at it. "There's something here," he said, pointing. "Can you read that part?" The Hokage frowned, studying where Percy indicated. "Curious. It appears to be written in a script I'm not familiar with. Almost as if it's not from our world at all." Percy leaned closer, and to his surprise, the strange script suddenly resolved itself into clear English. "To the voyager between worlds, bearer of ocean's blood, the phoenix rises when worlds converge. The crossing begins with fire and water united." "I can read it," Percy said, excitement and trepidation mingling in his voice. "It's in my language, English. It's a message. For me." "What does it say?" Kakashi asked, his usually casual demeanor giving way to intense interest. Percy translated the message, watching as the Hokage and Kakashi exchanged significant glances. "The crossing begins with fire and water united," the Hokage repeated thoughtfully. "Fire and water, traditionally opposed elements, yet here described as united. My powers come from Poseidon, god of the sea," Percy explained. "Water has always been my element, and the phoenix represents fire. A convergence of opposing forces," Kakashi mused. "Like different dimensions meeting." Sakura, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke up. "The Impusa that attacked Percy had wings of fire, but sent him here through a portal. Fire creating a pathway between worlds." The Hokage rolled up the scroll carefully. "I believe we have our answer, at least in part. Percy Jackson, it seems you were brought to our world specifically to find this contract. The Phoenix CL, and may hold the key to your return home, and perhaps to something more." "Something more?" Percy asked. "The Phoenix rises when worlds converge," the Hokage quoted. "This suggests more than just your individual journey. A larger event may be unfolding, a convergence of dimensions that the Phoenix clan is somehow connected to." Percy thought of all the prophecies he'd been part of back home. How they'd always seemed straightforward at first, only to reveal deeper, more complex meanings later. "So what now?" "Now," Kakashi said, "we proceed with our plan. You'll observe the Chunin exams, starting tomorrow with the written test. We'll keep the Phoenix contract secure but accessible to you for further study. And," he added with an eye crinkle that suggested a smile, "we'll be on alert for your water-manipulating doppelganger." The Hokage returned the scroll to its box. "In the meantime, I suggest you prepare yourself, Percy Jackson. The Chunin exams have a way of testing everyone involved, not just the participants." As Percy left the Hokage Tower with Kakashi and Sakura, the wooden box containing the Phoenix contract tucked securely under his arm, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being pulled deeper into the mysteries of this world. The accusation from the Rain Ninjas troubled him. Someone with abilities similar to his own was causing trouble, potentially trying to frame him. And beneath it all was the nagging worry about his friends back home. Did they know he was missing? Was time even passing the same way in his world? Annabeth would be frantic if she couldn't reach him. "You seem troubled," Kakashi observed as they walked through the village streets, now crowded with visitors for the exams. "Just thinking about home," Percy admitted. "My friends, my family. They have no idea where I am." Kakashi nodded understandingly. "The burden of being pulled between worlds. But take heart. If the Phoenix contract brought you here, it may also provide your way home." After the exams, Sakura added, "The Hokage wants you to observe all 3 stages." Percy raised an eyebrow. 3 stages? What exactly am I in for?" Kakashi's eye crinkled in amusement. Chunin exams test all aspects of a ninja's abilities. The first stage is a written exam." "Written?" Percy groaned. "That's not exactly my strong suit." "You're observing, not participating," Kakashi reminded him. "Though we've arranged for you to be in the examination room, to keep an eye on the proceedings." "And the other stages?" "The second is a survival exercise in the Forest of Death," Sakura explained. Teams must collect 2 scrolls and make it to a central tower within a time limit. While avoiding other teams trying to take their scrolls, Kakashi added cheerfully. And the various deadly creatures that inhabit the forest. Forest of Death, Percy repeated. Catchy name. The 3rd stage consists of one-on-one combat tournaments, Kakashi continued. Public spectacle. Where the finalists demonstrate their skills before the village leaders and feudal lords. Percy absorbed this information, trying to imagine how he was supposed to observe a survival exercise in a deadly forest, or what insights he could offer on ninja combat techniques. As if reading his thoughts, Kakashi added, your perspective is valuable precisely because it's different. You come from a world with its own systems of power, its own ways of developing skills and facing challenges. The Hokage believes this outsider view might reveal things we take for granted or overlook. They reached a fork in the road, and Sakura excused herself to prepare for tomorrow's exam. Percy and Kakashi continued toward Percy's apartment in comfortable silence until Kakashi spoke again. About the Phoenix contract, he said casually. There's something you should know. Percy glanced at him. What's that? The last known Phoenix summoner, the one who fought the Nine Tails a century ago, wasn't originally from the village he defended. What do you mean? According to the legends, he appeared mysteriously one day, with no background or history anyone could verify. He had unusual abilities with both water and fire, abilities that didn't conform to standard chakra manipulation techniques. Kakashi fixed Percy with a meaningful look. Sound familiar? Percy's step faltered. You think he was like me? From another world? It's a possibility worth considering. And if true, it suggests you're not the first to make this crossing the contract mentions. Percy's mind raced with the implications. So someone else found their way home eventually. That's encouraging. Or, Kakashi said quietly, he found a reason to stay. Before Percy could ask what he meant, they reached his apartment building. Kakashi handed him a small card with an embossed leaf symbol. Your observer's pass for tomorrow. Be at the academy by 8. Ibiki Morino, the first examiner, knows to expect you. With that, Kakashi disappeared in his customary swirl of leaves. Inside his apartment, Percy placed the Phoenix contract box carefully on the table and sank onto his bed, mind whirling with everything he'd learned. He pulled out Riptide, studying the faint flame patterns that still rippled along the blade when uncapped. What are you trying to tell me? He murmured to the sword. As if in response, the flame patterns flared briefly, casting dancing shadows on the wall. Percy capped the pen and tucked it away, then turned his attention to preparing for tomorrow's exams. Whatever mysteries awaited him, whatever dangers lurked in this strange world of ninjas and chakra, Percy knew one thing for certain. He was in the thick of it now, prophecy and all. And as a demigod who'd faced the Titan Lord himself, he wouldn't back down from the challenge. The academy classroom was packed with genin from various villages, their different headbands and outfits creating a colorful mosaic of ninja cultures. Percy stood at the back of the room with Ibiki Morino, the imposing, scarred Chunin who would be proctoring the first exam. Remember, Ibiki rumbled quietly, you're here to observe, not interfere. No matter what happens. Percy nodded, adjusting the special observer's armband the Hokage had provided. It marked him as officially sanctioned but separate from the competition. Several genin had already cast curious glances his way, whispering questions about who he was and why a non-participant was allowed in the examination room. Team 7 had arrived earlier, with Naruto practically vibrating with excitement. Sasuke maintained his usual stoic demeanor, but Percy noticed how his eyes constantly scanned the room, assessing potential threats. Sakura looked nervous but determined. Percy had wished them luck, earning a thumbs up from Naruto, a small smile from Sakura, and a nod from Sasuke, practically effusive by the Uchiha's standards. Now, as Ibiki prepared to address the gathered genin, Percy leaned against the wall and surveyed the room. He spotted the Sand siblings, with Gaara's cold eyes briefly meeting his before dismissively looking away. The Sound ninjas were huddled in a corner, including the one who had attacked Percy. Various other teams clustered together, some looking confident, others anxious. There was no sign of the Rain team that had accused him, which Percy found odd. Welcome to the first stage of the Chunin exams, Ibiki's voice boomed through the room, instantly commanding silence. Before we begin, a few rules. As Ibiki explained the writ.N test's complicated system of team scoring and automatic disqualification for cheating, Percy couldn't help but admire the cleverness of the setup. This wasn't just a test of knowledge, but of information gathering skills. The genin were expected to cheat without getting caught. While papers were being distributed, Percy noticed a flicker of movement at one of the windows. Glancing over, he caught sight of a small bird perched on the windowsill, unremarkable except for the unusual reddish-orange tint to its feathers. As Percy watched, the bird seemed to meet his gaze directly before flying away. "The test begins now," Ibiki announced. The room filled with the sound of pencils scratching on paper, interspersed with the occasional nervous shuffle. Percy watched with interest as the Var.IOUS genin employed their techniques to gather information. Sasuke was using his Sharingan to copy another student's pencil movements. Sakura, he noted with a smile, was simply answering the questions. Apparently one of the few who actually knew the material. Naruto, meanwhile, looked like he was having a silent meltdown at his desk. As Percy continued his observation, he became aware of an odd sensation, a faint warmth emanating from his pocket where Riptide was stored. Casually, he slipped his hand in and felt the pen was definitely warmer than usual. Keeping one eye on the exam proceedings, Percy surreptitiously withdrew Riptide and was alarmed to see a faint orange glow emanating from it, visible even through the pen casing. "Is there a problem?" Ibiki had appeared silently at his side, eyeing the glowing pen with suspicion. "I'm not sure," Percy admitted quietly. "It's never done this before." Ibiki's scarred face betrayed no emotion, but he nodded slightly. "Keep it concealed. We don't need distractions." Percy slipped Riptide back into his pocket, but the warmth continued to increase. Then, another movement caught his eye, not inside the classroom, but outside. The same reddish-orange bird had returned, now joined by two others. They perched on the windowsill, all three staring directly at Percy. A sudden commotion from the far side of the room drew everyone's attention. One of the genin, a grass ninja Percy hadn't noticed before, had collapsed, clutching his head. "What's happening?" Ibiki demanded, striding toward the disturbance. The grass ninja's teammates looked panicked. "We don't know. He just started saying something was burning, and then..." The fallen genin suddenly straightened up, his eyes open but unfocused. When he spoke, his voice had an odd, showing quality that sent chills down Percy's spine. "The crossing approaches. Fire and water united. The phoenix rises when worlds converge." The exact words from the Phoenix contract. Before anyone could react, the grass ninja's eyes rolled back, and he slumped into unconsciousness. The room erupted into confused murmurs as Ibiki ordered the boy taken to the medical bay. As the grass ninja was carried out, Percy noticed something that made his blood run cold, a small puddle of water forming beneath the boy's seat, water that seemed to move with purpose, slithering across the floor like a living thing. Percy glanced around to see if anyone else had noticed, but all eyes were on the unconscious genin being removed from the room. All eyes except Gaara's. The sand ninja was staring directly at the moving water. His expression unreadable. The water puddle reached the wall near Percy and began to rise, forming symbols that only remained for a moment before collapsing back into formlessness. "Find me at the forest's heart." Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the water evaporated, leaving no trace. Percy's hand instinctively went to his pocket, gripping Riptide. The pen had grown almost hot to the touch. "Return to your tests," Ibiki commanded the room, restoring order with his authoritative presence. "You still have 45 minutes remaining." As the genin reluctantly returned their attention to their papers, Ibiki made his way back to Percy. "What was that?" he asked in a low voice. "And don't tell me you don't know." The words he spoke, "They're from the Phoenix contract," Percy replied quietly. "And that water? Someone's trying to send me a message." Ibiki's eyes narrowed. "The same someone who attacked the Rain team." "Possibly," Percy admitted. "The T's heart. That must mean the central tower in the Forest of Death, for the second exam." "A trap, perhaps," Ibiki suggested. Percy nodded grimly. "Probably. But also my best chance to find out who's impersonating me and why they're connected to the Phoenix contract." Ibiki studied him for a moment. "I'll report this to the Hokage after the exam. In the meantime, stay alert." Whoever or whatever is behind this clearly has no concern for the exam protocols or the safety of the participants. The rest of the exam passed without further incident, though Percy noticed the 3 reddish birds remained at the window, watching. When Ibiki finally announced the end of the written portion and revealed the purpose of the 10th question, a test of resolve and courage, Percy couldn't help but admire the psychological tactics. As the relieved genin filed out, many casting curious glances at Percy as they passed, Naruto bounded over, grinning from ear to ear. "We passed the first test. I knew we would, even though I didn't answer a single question, believe it." Percy smiled despite his concerns. "Good job, Naruto. You too, Sakura, Sasuke." Sakura beamed while Sasuke merely nodded. "What happened with that grass ninja?" Sakura asked, lowering her voice. The things he said sounded important. Percy hesitated, aware of Ibiki watching him. "Just a medical issue, I guess," he said vaguely. "Nothing to worry about." Sasuke's eyes narrowed, clearly not believing him, but before he could press the issue, another Chunin burst through the window in a dramatic entrance, a woman with purple hair that Percy recognized as Anko. The guard from his first day in Konoha. "All right, maggots," she announced with disturbing cheerfulness. "I'm Anko Mitarashi, your proctor for the second exam. Meet at training ground 44 in 1 hour. Don't be late, or you're disqualified." As the genin rushed out to prepare for the next stage, Percy moved to follow, but Ibiki caught his arm. "A word of advice," the scarred Chunin said grimly. "The Forest of Death isn't called that for show. Even experienced Chunin don't enter it lightly. Whatever awaits you at the forest's heart, it won't be friendly." Percy appreciated the warning but couldn't help a small, wry smile. "I've been in some pretty unfriendly places before. The Sea of Monsters, the Labyrinth, Tartarus." Ibiki raised an eyebrow. "I don't know what those places are. But I recognize the tone of someone who's seen true darkness." He released Percy's arm. "Just remember, in the Forest of Death, it's not only the creatures and other ninjas you need to watch for. The forest itself can be an enemy." With that ominous warning, Percy left to meet Kakashi, who was waiting to escort him to the second exam site. As he stepped outside, he noticed the 3 reddish birds take flight, circling once overhead before flying in the direction of training ground 44. Whatever, or whoever, awaited him in the Forest of Death, Percy had the NCT feeling that events were accelerating toward a confrontation that would determine not only his fate in this world but perhaps the nature of the crossing itself. And through it all, the Phoenix Contract's words echoed in his mind. The Phoenix rises when worlds converge. Training Ground 44 lived up to its ominous nickname. Massive trees with trunks wider than cars stretched upward, their dense canopy blocking much of the sunlight. Twisted roots created a treacherous landscape below, while the sounds of distant roars and screeches hinted at the dangers lurking within. A tall fence surrounded the entire perimeter, plastered with warning signs that Anko seemed particularly proud of as she explained the rules of the second exam to the gathered genin. Percy stood to the side with Kakashi, who had been briefed about the incident during the written exam. "The Hokage is concerned," Kakashi said quietly as they watched Anko distribute Heaven and Earth scrolls to the teams. "First the attack on the Rain team. Now this message specifically for you. Someone is very interested in your presence here, Percy." "The Phoenix Contract is at the center of it," Percy replied. "The message the water used the exact same words from the hidden text I could read. Which suggests whoever is behind this can also read that text," Kakashi noted. "Meaning they either come from your world or have some connection to it." Percy nodded, his hand instinctively reaching for Riptide. The pen had cooled since the classroom incident, but he could still feel a faint warmth emanating from it. "What's the plan, then?" he asked. "I'm supposed to be an observer for this exam, but I can hardly observe dozens of teams scattered throughout this forest." Kakashi's eye crinkled. "Actually, the Hokage has authorized a slight change in your role. You'll be stationed at the central tower, the forest's heart, along with several Anbu operatives." "Anbu?" Percy questioned. "Elite ninja who answer directly to the Hokage. Think of them as our special forces." Kakashi pulled out a small earpiece. "You'll be wearing this communicator to stay in contact with the Anbu team. If your admirer shows up at the tower as promised, we'll be ready." Percy took the earpiece, understanding the strategy. I'm the bait. In a manner of speaking, Kakashi admitted. But well-protected bait. And this way, you'll still fulfill your observer role. The central tower is where teams bring their scrolls to complete the exam. You'll be able to see who finishes and in what condition. As they talked, Percy noticed Gaara watching him from across the clearing. The sand ninja's eyes were cold and assessing, his gourd seemingly shifting slightly on his back as if the sand within was restless. What's his story? Percy asked Kakashi, nodding discreetly toward Gaara. Kakashi followed his gaze. Gaara of the desert, son of the Kazekage, the Sand Village's leader. He has a difficult past and dangerous abilities. The fact that he's taken an interest in you is concerning. He said something weird when we first met, Percy recalled. That my chakra smells like the ocean, and that his mother finds it confusing. Kakashi tensed slightly. Did he? That's not good, Percy. Gaara doesn't have a mother. She died when he was born. If he's talking about his mother, he's referring to something else entirely. Before Percy could ask what that meant, Enko's voice cut through the clearing. All right, maggots. Each team has received either a heaven or earth scroll. Your objective is to collect one of each and make it to the central tower within 5 days. What happens in the forest stays in the forest. Killing is permitted, though not encouraged. Her smile suggested she wasn't particularly troubled by the prospect of teenage casualties. The second exam begins in 30 minutes. Use this time to strategize with your teams and sign the death waivers. As the genin broke into their groups, Naruto spotted Percy and bounded over, dragging Sasuke and Sakura with him. Percy, are you watching the second exam too? It's going to be awesome. We're definitely getting both scrolls on the first day, believe it. Percy couldn't help smiling at Naruto's enthusiasm. I'll be at the central tower, actually. I'll see you when you finish. You'd better prepare our victory celebration, Naruto declared. We'll be there before anyone else. Sakura looked less confident but determined. We've trained for this. We're ready. Sasuke said nothing, but his eyes were focused and intense. Percy had seen that look before, on demigods before a crucial quest or battle. Be careful in there, Percy said seriously. Especially of other teams. From what I've heard, some of them play for keeps. Hi's gaze drifted meaningfully toward the sand and sound teams. Sasuke caught the look and nodded almost imperceptibly. We can handle ourselves, the Uchiha said quietly. As Team 7 moved away to prepare, Kakashi touched Percy's shoulder. It's time. I'll escort you to the tower through an alternative route. The Anbu team is already in position. They slipped away from the gathering point, circling around to a smaller, less obvious entrance to the forest. 2 masked figures, Anbu, Percy presumed, met them there. This is Hawk and Lynx, Kakashi introduced, indicating the Anbu operatives whose animal masks concealed their identities. They'll be your primary contacts inside the tower. Percy nodded in greeting, receiving curt nods in return. The tower is approximately 10 kilometers from this point, Hawk explained. Voice distorted slightly by the mask. We'll move quickly and quietly. Stay between us at all times. With that, they entered the forest of death. Percy had expected to travel on foot, perhaps jumping through trees as he'd seen the ninjas do. Instead, the Anbu moved with such blinding speed that Percy could barely track them. Kakashi solved this problem by simply picking Percy up and carrying him in a blur of movement that left the demigod's stomach lurching. They covered ground at an astonishing rate, passing massive trees, murky swamps, and areas where the vegetation looked distinctly carnivorous. Twice, Hawk signaled a halt as enormous creatures crossed their path, once a centipede larger than a subway car, and later a tiger the size of a small elephant. Friendly wildlife, Percy muttered after they resumed their journey. This is nothing, Lynx replied, voice identifying her as female despite the androgynous mask. The real predators come out at night. It took less than 20 minutes to reach the tower, a journey that would have taken the genin teams hours or days, especially while hunting for scrolls and avoiding other teams. The central tower was more impressive up close, a sturdy stone structure rising above the canopy, with various entrances around its perimeter where teams would arrive after collecting their scrolls. Inside, a Team O Chunin and Junin were already setting up monitoring stations and medical facilities for the arriving genin. Percy recognized Genma, the Senbon chewing Junin from the archives incident, who nodded in greeting. Everything's prepared, he reported to Kakashi. We have Anbu stationed at all entrances and a full sensor barrier around the tower perimeter. If anyone approaches with unusual chakra signatures, we'll know. Good, Kakashi replied, and the Hokage will be joining us tomorrow. For now, Anko will oversee operations once she finishes starting the exam. Kakashi turned to Percy. Your quarters are on the second floor. There's a central monitoring room where you can observe the forest's camera feeds, limited as they are, and be present when teams arrive. Percy nodded, taking in the tower's layout. And if our water-manipulating friend shows up, the Anbu will engage first, Hawk stated firmly. You are to remain back unless explicitly instructed otherwise. If this is an imposter with abilities similar to yours, we need to capture them for questioning. Assuming they can be captured, Percy muttered, remembering the fluid way the water message had formed and vanished in the classroom. Lynx led Percy to his quarters, a simple room with a bed, desk, and small attached bathroom. The window offered a view of the dense forest canopy stretching in all directions. The monitoring room is down the hall, she explained. You'll have access to all common areas of the tower, but some sections are restricted to exam officials only. Your observer status doesn't grant full clearance. Understood, Percy said. What about the Phoenix contract? Is it still secure? The Hokage has it, Kakashi answered, entering the room behind them. He believes it's safest with him for now. But he sent this for you to study. Kakashi handed Percy a small scroll. Opening it, Percy found detailed notes about the Phoenix clan's history in this world, along with sketches of their appearance and abilities. The Hokage had this prepared from the archives, Kakashi explained. It might help you understand what connection the Phoenix contract has to your situation. Percy set the scroll on the desk. Thanks. When does the exam officially start? In about 10 minutes, Lynx answered. The first teams probably won't reach the tower for at least 24 hours, though exceptional ones might arrive sooner. And our mystery guest? Percy asked. Kakashi's eye narrowed slightly. That's the question, isn't it? The message said to meet at the forest's heart, but not when. It could be any time during the 5-day exam period. Or, Hawk added, it could be a diversion to draw our attention away from something else entirely. Percy hadn't considered that possibility, and it troubled him. You think this might be about more than just me? The Chunin exams bring together future leaders from all the ninja villages, Kakashi explained. It's historically been a me of vulnerability and political maneuvering. Your arrival and the discovery of the Phoenix contract might be coincidental to a larger plot. Or integral to it, Lynx countered. Percy sat on the edge of the bed, processing this. Either way, we wait and see who shows up at the tower, teams completing the exam, my water clone, or both. Precisely, Kakashi agreed. In the meantime, review that scroll. The more you understand about the Phoenix contract, the better prepared you'll be for whatever comes next. With that, Kakashi and the Anbu left Percy to settle in. Through his window, a distant horn sounded, marking the official start of the second exam. Somewhere in that vast, dangerous forest, dozens of genin teams were now racing, fighting, and scheming to obtain the scrolls they needed. And somewhere, perhaps in that same forest or perhaps elsewhere entirely, someone with water abilities like Percy's was waiting to make their move. Percy unrolled the scroll on the Phoenix clan and began to read. Riptide a reassuring weight in his pocket. Whatever came next, he would be ready. The first day passed without incident. Percy divided his time between studying the Phoenix clan scroll, monitoring the forest cameras with the examination staff, and periodically checking in with the Anbu team. The scroll contained fascinating information about the Phoenix clan, their origins as guardians of the boundaries between dimensions, their mastery of fire that transcended normal chakra manipulation, and their legendary ability to rebirth themselves from their own ashes. Percy was particularly interested in the accounts of past summoners, though most were fragmentary and vague. One passage caught his attention. The Phoenix clan does not bind itself to bloodlines or villages, but to individuals whose spirits resonate with their own, those who have faced death and rebirth, who stand at the crossroads of worlds, who carry the potential for both destruction and renewal. It Remen, dead Percy uncomfortably of his own experiences, bathing in the river Styx, losing his memories, falling into Tartarus. Death and rebirth, in various forms, had indeed marked his journey as a demigod. By evening, no teams had yet reached the tower, expected, according to Anko, who had returned from launching the exam. The weak ones are probably already dead, she said cheerfully during dinner. Why? CH was served in a common area for the exam officials. The strong ones are hunting each other or setting up ambushes. We won't see anyone until tomorrow at the earliest. Percy picked at his food, distracted by the constant, faint warmth from Riptide in his pocket and the lack of any sign from his mysterious imitator. Waiting is the hardest part, isn't it? A voice said beside him. Percy turned, to find a white-haired man he hadn't met before, with red markings on his face and a forehead protector with the character for oil, rather than a village symbol. Jiraiya, the man introduced himself, sitting down uninvited. The Toad Sage and one of the legendary Chunin, at your service. Percy recalled Sakura mentioning Jiraiya, the ninja who had a contract with the Toads, including the great Toad Sage who could tell prophecies. Percy Jackson, he replied. But I guess you already knew that. Jiraiya grinned. Word travels fast when someone from another dimension shows up in our village. Discovers a legendary summoning contract, and gets tangled up in the Chunin exams. I'm not exactly tangled up in them, Percy protested. I'm just observing. Right, and that's why you're sitting in this tower like a juicy piece of bait while ambush shadows your every move. Jiraiya chuckled at Percy's surprised expression. I may look like a simple, handsome wanderer, but little pens in Konoha without me knowing about it. Percy studied the older man. Despite his jovial manner, there was a sharpness in Jiraiya's eyes that reminded him of Chiron, someone who had seen much and understood more than he let on. Kakashi mentioned you have a contract with the Toads, Percy said. And that the great Toad Sage can tell prophecies. Jiraiya's expression grew more serious. Getting right to it, are we? Yes, the great Toad Sage has the gift of prophecy. Not unlike your Oracle of Delphi, from what Sarutobi tells me. Percy blinked in surprise. You know about the Oracle. The Hokage and I had a long chat about your world after you found the Phoenix contract. Fascinating place, with your gods and monsters and quests. Jiraiya leaned in closer. The thing about prophecies, though, is they rarely mean exactly what we think they do at first. I've learned that the hard way. Tell me about it, Percy muttered, thinking of all the prophecies he'd been part of that twisted meanings or unexpected fulfillments. The great Toad Sage gave a prophecy recently that might interest you, Jiraiya continued. Something about waters from beyond the veil, and fire reborn from ancient ashes. At the time, I thought it referred to something else entirely, but now I'm not so sure. Percy felt a chill despite the warm evening. When did he give this prophecy? About a month ago, Jiraiya replied. Just before strange reports started coming in from our agents about unusual water phenomena in various regions, moving independently, forming shapes, acting with apparent intelligence. Like whatever attacked the rain team and sent me that message, Percy concluded. Jiraiya nodded gravely. Exactly. And always near sources of fire or extreme heat. Volcanoes, hot springs, ceremonial bonfires. Fire and water united, Percy quoted from the Phoenix contract. The Phoenix rises when worlds converge. The crossing begins, Jiraiya finished. Yes, it's all connected. But the question remains, connected to what? What exactly is this crossing that's supposedly beginning? Before Percy could respond, an alarm sounded from the monitoring room. Both men rushed to investigate. Finding the examination staff gathered around a camera feed showing what appeared to be a massive disturbance in the forest. What is that? Percy asked, staring at the screen where Reese were being flattened by some unseen force. Trouble, Anko said grimly. That's about 5 kilometers from the tower, heading this way. And it's not a normal fight between Genin teams. The camera feed suddenly went static. Then dark. We've lost visual, a Chunin reported. Whatever it is just took out camera station 12. Anko turned to Jiraiya. Your call, Lord Jiraiya. Do we investigate or lock down the tower? Jiraiya's eyes narrowed. Both. Send an ambush squad to assess the situation. Put the tower on alert status but don't seal it yet, we still have teams legitimately trying to complete the exam. As Anko relayed the orders, Jiraiya pulled Percy aside. This might be your water manipulating friend making their move. Be ready, but stay within the tower. If this is a trap, we don't want to play into it. Percy nodded, feeling Riptide grow warmer in his pocket. And if they come here, then we'll have them contained, Jiraiya assured him. This tower is one of the most secure locations in Konoha when fully activated. The Anbu squad departed to investigate the disturbance, leaving an uneasy wait for those in the tower. Percy returned to his room to gather his thoughts and prepare for whatever might come. He uncapped Riptide, noting that the flame patterns along the blade were now clearly visible, glowing with an inner light that cast warm shadows across the room. A knock at his door interrupted his contemplation. Percy, it's me, Hawk. We've received the initial report from the investigation team. Percy opened the door, Riptide still in hand. Hawk's moss. Ked face revealed nothing of the ANBU's reaction to the glowing sword, but there was tension in his stance. The team found a battlefield, Hawk reported. Multiple genin teams, rain, grass, and waterfall villages, all incapacitated. No fatalities, but they're all suffering from extreme chakra exhaustion and exposure to some kind of water-based technique that left them disoriented and confused. My impersonator, Percy concluded grimly. Hawk nodded. The attack pattern matches what the rain team described earlier. But there's more. At the center of the clearing, a message was carved into the earth with what appears to be concentrated water pressure. What did it say? The convergence accelerates. Bring the contract to the tower at midnight. Percy felt Riptide pulse in his hand, he flame patterns rippling more intensely. They want the Phoenix contract. So it would seem. The Hokage is being informed, but it will take him at least 2 hours to reach the tower from the village. Jiraiya-sama is currently strengthening the tower's security seals and coordinating with the remaining Anbu. And the genin teams that were attacked? Percy asked. Being evacuated to the medical facilities in Konoha, Hawk answered. None were critically injured, but all reported seeing someone controlling water who looked like me, Percy finished, but not using a sword. And silent. Hawk nodded again. The description is consistent. Whoever this is, they're making no effort to hide their connection to you. In fact, they seem to be deliberately emphasizing it. Percy considered this. It's almost like they want everyone to think there are two of me. Or perhaps, Hawk suggested, they want you to think there are two of you. The implication hung in the air. Could this be something from Percy's own world? A monster that could take his form, or some kind of demigod doppelganger? Before he could pursue this thought further, another alarm sounded, different from the earlier one, more urgent. That's the perimeter alert, Hawk said, instantly alert. Something's breached the tower's outer defenses. They rushed to the monitoring room, where chaos had erupted. Screens displayed various angles of the tower's exterior, and on one, Percy saw it, a swirling vortex of water rising from the forest floor, engulfing one of the tower's entrances. Where's that coming from? Anko demanded. There's no water source there. It's like the water I saw in the classroom, Percy said, pointing to how the liquid moved with unnatural purpose, forming patterns before reshaping itself. Whoever's controlling it doesn't need a source. They can pull moisture from the air, the ground, plants. Like you, Jiraiya observed, appearing beside them. But on a larger scale. Percy nodded grimly. I can do that in emergencies, but not this easily and not this much. He watched as the water vortex shaped itself into a massive arm that pounded against the tower entrance. This is something else entirely. We have 3 genin teams inside the tower already, a Chunin reported. Shall we evacuate them to the upper levels? Do it, Jiraiya ordered. And get me a direct line to the Hokage. We may need to terminate the exam if this escalates. On the screens, the water arm had reshaped into a battering ram that slammed repeatedly against the reinforced door. With each impact, seals flared around the entrance, holding but visibly weakening. The barrier won't last much longer at this rate, Lynx reported, appearing from nowhere. And we have another problem. The cameras on the west side have gone dark. They're attacking from multiple directions, Jiraiya concluded. Classic diversion tactic. Hawk, take a team to secure the west entrance. Lynx, You're with me at the main breach point. What about me? Percy asked, Riptide glowing brightly in his hand. Jiraiya studied him for a moment. You said you can manipulate water too. Can you counter what they're doing? I can try, Percy said. Though he wasn't sure, he'd never attempted to wrest control of water from another hydrokinetic entity. But I'd have to be closer to it. Then you're with me and Lynx, Jiraiya decided. But stay behind us until we assess the situation more clearly. If this is a trap specifically for you, we don't want to deliver you right into it. They moved quickly through the tower, heading for the main entrance where the water attack was focused. As they descended the stairs, Percy felt Riptide growing almost unbearably hot in his hand, the flame patterns now so bright they illuminated the stairwell. Your sword, Lynx observed. It's reacting to something. The Phoenix contract is connected to all this somehow, Percy replied. And Riptide seems tuned to it. They reached the entrance level just as a tremendous crash echoed through the tower. The reinforced doors buckled inward, water pouring through the gaps around their frame. Get back, Jiraiya shouted, his hands flashing through a series of signs. Earth style. Swamp of the underworld. The floor before the doors transformed into a thick, muddy swamp that began swallowing the incoming water. For a moment, it seemed to work. Then the water froze instantly, expanding with such force that the remaining door hinges shattered. The doors flew inward, revealing a figure silhouetted against the night forest beyond. Water swirled around them like a living cloak, and as they stepped into the light, Percy felt his breath catch. It was like looking in a mirror, but not quite. The figure had his face, his build, even wore similar clothes, but their eyes glowed an unnatural blue, and their movements had a fluid, inhuman quality. What the hell? Percy breathed. Fascinating, his doppelganger, said in a voice that was his but echoed strangely, as if speaking underwater. The vessel is even more similar than I anticipated. Jiraiya stepped forward, hands already forming new signs. Identify yourself. The water Percy smiled, an expression Percy found deeply unsettling on his own face. I am the messenger, the herald of convergence, the voice of the Phoenix King. His gaze fixed on Percy. And I have come for what is mine. With a gesture, tendrils of water shot forward with incredible speed. Jiraiya countered with a fire technique that turned most to steam, but one tendril slipped through, aiming directly for Percy. Acting on instinct, Percy reached out with his own power, attempting to take control of the water. For a moment, there was resistance, like trying to bend steel ether than liquid. Then suddenly he felt a connection, a resonance between his will and the water itself. The tendril froze midair, trembling as two opposing forces fought for control. The water Percy's eyes widened slightly. So the vessel has power too. Interesting. I'm not a vessel, Percy growled, pushing harder with his will. The water tendril began to reverse direction, slowly turning back toward his double. Not yet, the doppelganger replied with eerie calmness. But you will be. The convergence demands it. With a sharp gesture, the water tendril exploded into a fine mist that hung in the air for a moment before surging back together in a wave that slammed into Jiraiya, sending the Chunin crashing into a wall. Lynx moved with blinding speed, throwing a volley of kunai dead with paper tags that Percy recognized as exploding seals. The water Percy deflected most with a shield of liquid, but one got through, detonating against his shoulder. The explosion should have torn flesh and bone. Instead, the doppelganger's shoulder simply dissolved into water before reforming, unharmed. Physical attacks are futile, the copy stated flatly. This form is merely a construct. Water shaped by will and bound by purpose. What do you want? Percy demanded, Riptide blazing in his hand. I told you, what is mine? The contract. The vessel. The water Percy's gaze fixed on Riptide. The sword is responding to the call. It knows what must come. Before Percy could respond, Jiraiya was back in the fight, slamming his palm into the ground. Summoning jutsu. In a cloud of smoke, a toad the size of a small car appeared, its warty skin a reddish-orange color that reminded Percy of the birds he'd seen earlier. Jiraiya boy, the toad croaked, this doesn't look good. Gamakichi, I need acid. Jiraiya commanded. The toad took a deep breath and spat a stream of yellowish liquid at the water Percy. Where it struck, the watery form hissed and steamed, momentarily losing cohesion. Acid disrupts his water control, Jiraiya called to Percy and Lynx. Focus attacks there. The water, Percy snarled. The first real emotion he'd shown, and the temperature in the room plummeted. The scattered water on the floor froze instantly, including the puddles around his feet, anchoring him in place as his form solidified into ice. Enough games, the ice, Percy said. The Phoenix King grows impatient. The convergence will not wait for your understanding. With that, the ice, Percy shattered, not into pieces, but into thousands of tiny ice needles that shot outward in all directions. Percy ducked behind a column, feeling several needles embed themselves in the stone inches from his head. Jiraiya countered with a fire technique that melted many of the projectiles, while Lynx seemed to dance between the needles with impossible agility. Gamakichi was less fortunate, several needles piercing his tough hide before he disappeared in a puff of smoke. When the barrage ended, the ice needles melted and flowed together again, reforming into Percy's double, now standing at the center of the room. The contract, Ice, Percy demanded. Now, it's not here, Jiraiya said, blood trickling from a cut on his cheek where an ice needle had grazed him. And even if it was, we wouldn't hand it over to whatever you are. The doppelganger's eyes narrowed. Then I will take the vessel instead. The contract will follow. Before anyone could react, the floor beneath Percy's feet turned to slick ice. He slipped, losing his balance just as a tendril of water wrapped around his ankle and yanked him forward with incredible force. Percy slashed at the tendril with Riptide, expecting the celestial bronze to pass through harmlessly. It was designed to hurt monsters, not water. To his shock, the blade connected with a solid resistance, the flame patterns flaring brilliantly as it cut through the water as if it were flesh. The water, Percy hissed in what sounded like pain, recoiling as the severed tendril splashed harmlessly to the ground. The sword, the doppelganger growled. It bears the Phoenix King's mark already. How? Percy didn't understand either, but he wasn't going to question an advantage. He charged forward, Riptide cutting through the water attacks that his double launched at him. Each time the blade connected with the water under the doppelganger's control, the flame patterns burned brighter. Jiraiya and Lynx joined the attack, the Chunin using fire techniques while Lynx threw more explosive tags. Caught in a three-way assault, the water, Percy seemed to be losing coherence, his form wavering at the edges. Then, abruptly, he stopped fighting. The water surrounding him calmed, and he straightened up, staring directly at Percy. Time grows short, he announced. The Phoenix King cannot wait. If you will not come willingly, then witness what happens when fire and water converge without guidance. With those cryptic words, the water, Percy dissolved into a swirling vortex that retreated through the shattered doorway, disappearing into the darkness of the forest beyond. Percy started to give chase, but Jiraiya caught his arm. Wait, the Chunin cautioned. That was too easy. He's planning something else. As if on cue, a tremor ran through the tower, followed by a distant roaring sound that grew rapidly louder. What's happening? Percy asked, steadying himself against a wall as the vibrations intensified. Lynx appeared at a window, her masked face turning toward them with what Percy sensed was alarm. The river, it's changing course. Heading straight for the tower. Percy joined her at the window and saw it, a massive wall of water surging through the forest, uprooting trees and carving a new channel directly toward them. But what made his blood run cold was what he saw within the water, flickers of flame that should have been extinguished but instead burned brighter, giving the entire flood a strange, fiery glow. Fire and water united, Percy whispered. This is what the Phoenix contract warned about. Jiraiya was already moving, hands forming complex signs. Everyone to the upper levels. Now, they raced up the stairs, meeting panicked Chunin and the few genin teams who had made it to the tower. Jiraiya took command, directing everyone to the highest floor. What about the other Anbu team? Percy asked as they ran. The ones who went to check the west entrance. No contact yet, Lynx reported grimly. And the water is almost here. They reached the observation deck at the tower's summit just in time to see the flaming flood hit. The impact shook the entire structure, water pouring in through the shattered entrance and every window on the lower floors. But instead of simply flooding the building, the water began to move with purpose, forming intricate patterns along the walls and floors, patterns that Percy recognized with a chill as the same symbols he'd seen in the Phoenix contract. It's not trying to destroy the tower, he realized. It's turning it into some kind of ritual site. A summoning circle, Jiraiya confirmed, his face grim as he watched the patterns spread upward, floor by floor. But on a scale I've never seen. Whatever is being summoned. He didn't finish the thought, but he didn't need to. The implications were clear. Something massive, powerful, and probably very dangerous was on its way. We need the Phoenix contract, Percy said suddenly. The water Percy, the messenger, whatever he is, he wanted it for a reason. Maybe it can control whatever's happening. The Hokage has it, Lynx reminded him, and he won't reach us in time. Percy looked at Riptide, still glowing with those flame patterns that had responded to the water attacks. Maybe we don't need the physical contract. My sword is connected to it somehow. Jiraiya studied the blade thoughtfully. Worth a try. What do you propose? Percy had no idea, but some instinct told him what to do next. He moved to the center of the observation deck and raised Riptide high, its glow illuminating the entire room. I call upon the Phoenix clan, he declared, feeling slightly ridiculous but pressing on. As one who bears your mark, I seek your guidance in this convergence. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Riptide's glow intensified to a blinding brightness, and Percy felt the sword grow scorching hot in his hand. Despite the pain, he maintained his grip, watching as the flame patterns expanded to cover the entire blade. A screech echoed from somewhere above them, a sound unlike any bird Percy had ever heard. Musical yet powerful enough to vibrate the air itself. Through the observation deck's windows, they saw three shapes circling the tower, their forms outlined in fire against the night sky. The birds from earlier, Percy realized. They're phoenixes. The smallest of the three dive-bombed toward the tower, flames trailing behind it as it shot through an open window. It circled the room once, its heat palpable, before landing on the hilt of Riptide. Despite being no larger than a falcon, the phoenix radiated power. Its feathers shifted between shades of gold, crimson, and orange. As if they were made of living flame. Intelligent eyes regarded Percy with clear recognition. Vessel of Poseidon, the phoenix spoke, its voice high and musical in Percy's mind. The convergence has begun too soon. The herald acts without authority. Who are you? Percy asked, amazed that he could hold a conversation with a bird while a flaming flood consumed the tower beneath them. I am Suzaku, youngest of the Phoenix clan scouts, the bird replied. Sent to find the one marked by our king to bear the contract. You, me, why me? Because you stand at the crossroads of worlds. Because your blood carries the essence of a primordial force. Because you have died and returned. Suzaku's fiery head tilted. And because you arrived when the veils between dimensions grow thin, allowing the convergence to begin. The building shook again, more violently than before. Through the windows, Percy could see the water level rising steadily, the flames within it growing brighter. What is the convergence? Jiraiya demanded. What is being summoned? Suzaku turned her burning gaze to the Sannin. Not what, who. The Phoenix King seeks to cross into this realm, but the conditions are not yet right. The Herald forces the passage, risking catastrophic dimensional collapse. How do we stop it? Percy asked urgently. The contract must be properly activated, Suzaku explained. A true summoner must establish the bond and stabilize the passage. Otherwise, the Phoenix King's arrival will tear both worlds asunder. The Hokage has the contract, Lynx reminded them again. He's still at least an hour away. Suzaku shook her fiery head. There is no time. The physical contract is merely a focus. The true contract is written in blood and fire. She fixed her gaze on Percy again. Your sword bears our king's mark. It can serve as the conduit. Percy looked at Riptide, understanding dawning. That's why it's been reacting to all this. It's connected to the Phoenix clan somehow. Your blade exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously, Suzaku confirmed. As do you, son of Poseidon. This makes you both ideal conduits for the crossing. Another violent tremor shook the tower. Through the window, Percy could see that the flaming water had nearly reached their level, the patterns within it glowing with increasing intensity. What do I need to do? He asked Suzaku. Blood freely given, intent clearly stated, the words of binding spoken with conviction. The phoenix's feathers flared brighter. But be warned, Perseus Jackson. Once bound to the Phoenix clan, your fate will be forever intertwined with ours. The crossing will bind both our worlds together in ways we cannot fully predict. Percy hesitated. This was more than just finding a way home. It was potentially changing the relationship between two entire dimensions. The responsibility was enormous. Will it stop whatever's happening now? He asked. Will it save everyone in this tower? In this forest? Suzaku nodded solemnly. The controlled crossing will replace the chaotic one the Herald attempts to force. But the price is your commitment to serve as the bridge between worlds. Another tremor. Stronger than before. Parts of the ceiling began to crack and fall. We're out of time, Jiraiya warned. Whatever you're going to do, Percy, do it now. Percy made his decision, drawing Riptide across his palm. He let his blood flow onto the flaming blade. I, Percy Jackson, son of Poseidon, accept the responsibility of the Phoenix contract. I offer my blood freely as bond and promise. The flame patterns on Riptide seemed to drink in his blood, the glow shifting to a deeper crimson. Suzaku spread her wings, growing in size until she was as large as an eagle, flames trailing from her wingtips. Speak the words of binding, she instructed. Fire and water united. The phoenix rises when worlds converge. The crossing begins. Percy repeated the words, feeling each syllable resonate with power. Riptide blazed in his hand, no longer painful but merging with his very being, as if sword and wielder were becoming one. The contract is accepted, Suzaku declared, our voice now audible to everyone in the room. The true crossing begins. She launched herself upward, her body transforming into pure flame that engulfed Percy entirely. But instead of burning, the fire felt invigorating, filling him with energy and clarity. Through the flames, Percy saw the water patterns throughout the tower change, responding to his will rather than the Herald's. The destructive, chaotic energy smoothed into controlled, purposeful flow. Outside, the other two phoenixes circled faster, leaving trails of fire that formed a massive summoning circle in the sky above the tower. At its center, a rift began to open, not like the tear the Impusa had created, but a structured, stable gateway between dimensions. Through it, Percy glimpsed another world, not Camp Half-Blood or New York, but a realm of living fire where massive phoenixes soared through skies of gold and crimson. And at the center, approaching the gateway, was a presence so ancient and powerful that Percy felt small just perceiving it. The Phoenix King. As the gateway widened, Percy felt himself rising, Suzaku's flames carrying him upward through the tower's damaged roof and into the center of the aerial summoning circle. Distantly, he was aware of Jiraiya and the others watching in awe from below. He hung suspended in the air, Riptide extended toward the gateway, his blood still coating its blade. From the other side, the Phoenix King extended what appeared to be a wing of pure golden flame. The moment they connected, a shockwave of power rippled outward, stabilizing the gateway and halting the chaotic flooding below. The water began to recede, returning to its natural course, while the flames within it coalesced into small, phoenix-like shapes that flew upward to join the ritual. Perseus Jackson. A voice like the heart of a star resonated in Percy's mind. You have answered our call. The contract is sealed. The Phoenix King remained mostly on the other side of the gateway, only a portion of his vast presence extending into Percy's world. Even that limited manifestation radiated more power than anything Percy had encountered before, rivaling even the gods of Olympus. The Herald acted without permission. Seeking to force a crossing that was not yet ready, the Phoenix King continued. For this, he will face judgment. But you have shown the courage and sacrifice worthy of a true summoner. What happens now? Percy asked, his voice steady despite the overwhelming presence before him. Now, the controlled convergence begins. Our worlds will remain distinct but connected through you and the contract. You may call upon us as allies, and in turn, you will serve as our anchor in this dimension. And the way home, Percy pressed. To my world. The Phoenix King's presence seemed to consider this. The pathways between dimensions have been opened. With our guidance, you may travel between them at need. But know this, Perseus Jackson, the bond of the contract transcends simple geography. Wherever you go, we go with you. Whatever challenges you face, we face together. Percy thought of Camp Half-Blood, of Annabeth, of all he'd left behind. I need to go back, at least to let them know I'm alive. And so you shall, when the time is right. But first, the Herald must be contained, and the consequences of his actions addressed. The Phoenix King's wing gently touched Percy's forehead. Accept now the first gift of our covenant. Knowledge flooded Percy's mind. Techniques and abilities unique to Phoenix summoners, the true history of the clan's interactions with both worlds. And most significantly, the identity of the herald who had copied his form. He's me, Percy gasped as understanding dawned. From another timeline, a possibility of you, the Phoenix King corrected. A version who made different choices, who embraced destructive power over heroism. In his reality, he became my summoner to conquer, not to protect. When he sensed the thinning of dimensional barriers, he sought to force his way here, to claim this world as he claimed his own. The implications were staggering. A dark version of himself, corrupted by power, trying to extend his conquest to new dimensions. With the true contract established through you, his connection is severed, the Phoenix King assured him. He will be drawn back to his own reality and contained there. But be vigilant. The barriers between worlds remain vulnerable. Others may seek to cross. The gateway began to close, the Phoenix King withdrawing most of his presence. Return to your friends below. Suzaku will remain with you as guide and companion. When you are ready to journey home, she will show you the way. With those parting words, the gateway sealed, leaving only the summoning circle briefly outlined in fire against the night sky before it too faded. Percy descended slowly, Suzaku's flames gently lowering him back to the observation deck where Jiraiya, Lynx, and now others, including Hawk and several genin teams who had witnessed the spectacle, waited in stunned silence. As his feet touched the ground, Percy felt the changes in himself, a new warmth alongside his affinity for water. A connection to fire that complemented rather than opposed his natural powers. Riptide had returned to normal size but still bore the flame patterns, now permanently etched into the celestial bronze. Suzaku, now back to her falcon size, perched on his shoulder. The immediate danger has passed, she announced to the assembled group. The herald has been banished back to his own dimension. What exactly happened? The Hokage demanded, having apparently arrived during the confrontation. The entire forest was flooding with flame when I approached. Percy explained everything. The water Percy's true identity is a corrupted version of himself from another timeline, the Phoenix King's intervention, and the new bond established through the contract. So you're now officially a Phoenix summoner, Jiraiya summarized. Looking impressed. The first in over a century. And apparently with the ability to travel between dimensions. When I'm ready, Percy clarified, glancing at Suzaku. I still need to understand exactly how it works. The Hokage studied Percy thoughtfully. This poses interesting diplomatic questions. You are, in essence, an ambassador between three worlds now, your own, ours, and the Phoenix realm. Percy hadn't thought of it that way, but the Hokage was right. He now stood at the crossroads of multiple dimensions, with responsibilities to each. The Phoenix King mentioned that the barriers between worlds remain vulnerable, Percy said. There could be other incursions. All the more reason for continued cooperation, the Hokage noted. Perhaps your unexpected arrival in our world was fortunate timing after all. As the initial excitement settled, attention turned to repairing the damage to the tower and continuing the Chunin exams, which had been temporarily suspended during the crisis. Most of the genin teams had been evacuated from the forest when the flooding began, but a few, including Team 7, Percy was relieved to learn, had made it to the tower before the chaos erupted. In fact, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura burst into the observation deck at that moment, having apparently fought their way through the confusion to find him. Percy, Naruto exclaimed, eyes wide as he took in Suzaku on Percy's shoulder. You have a fire bird. And your sword is all flamey. What happened? Percy couldn't help laughing at Naruto's enthusiastic reaction. It's a long story, he said. But the short version is, I found my way forward, and my way back. Sakura looked at Suzaku with wonder. So the Phoenix contract chose you. Does that mean you'll be staying in Konoha? Not permanently, Percy said gently. I have people waiting for me back home. But, he added, seeing their faces fall, I'll be able to visit. The contract lets me travel between worlds now. Sasuke, who had been quiet, finally spoke. So you'll be like a visitor from another dimension. Coming and going between worlds. Something like that, Percy agreed. Though, I think I have a lot to learn about being a Phoenix summoner first. And we have much to teach you, Suzaku added, her mental voice now projecting to everyone present. The convergence has only begun, Percy Jackson. Your journey as the bridge between worlds is just starting. As the dawn broke over the forest of death, illuminating the drying floodwaters and the scorched patterns left behind by the ritual, Percy stood at the tower's edge with his new companions, both human and phoenix. The Chunin exams would continue, altered but unbroken by the night's events. His role as observer had transformed into something much more significant, but the underlying purpose remained, to understand this world and his place in it. And when the time came to return home, to face whatever awaited him at Camp Half-Blood, he would do so not just as Percy Jackson, son of Poseidon, but as a phoenix summoner, bearer of the contract that bound dimensions together. The crossing had begun, and with it, a new chapter in Percy's already extraordinary life. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The Flames of Return. Percy stood atop the Hokage monument, gazing out over Konoha as the setting sun bathed the village in golden light. 3 days had passed since the chaotic events at the Forest of Death, and the final stage of the Chunin exams was set to begin tomorrow. The preliminary matches had concluded yesterday, with Naruto, Sasuke, and several others advancing to the tournament finals. Suzaku perched on his shoulder, her feathers shifting between shades of crimson and gold as they caught the fading sunlight. In the short time since forming their bond, Percy had grown accustomed to her constant presence and the steady warmth she radiated. "You're thinking about home again," Suzaku observed, not a question but a statement. Percy nodded. "The Phoenix King said I could return when I was ready. I think after the tournament tomorrow, it might be time." "You've learned much in your time here," Suzaku agreed. "Though there is always more to master about the Phoenix clan's abilities." That was true enough. Percy had spent hours each day working with Suzaku and occasionally Jiraiya to understand his new powers. The combination of his natural water abilities with the Phoenix clan's fire affinity had created unique techniques that even the experienced ninja of Konoha found fascinating. Steam manipulation, controlling water heated to its boiling point, creating scalding mists that could obscure or burn, these came naturally to him now. And when he channeled the Phoenix fire directly, he could produce flames that burned with unusual properties, healing allies while harming enemies. Riptide had changed as well. The flame patterns were now permanent, and when Percy channeled chakra through it, a skill Kakashi had patiently taught him, the blade could cut through almost anything, leaving edges cauterized by heat. "Do you think they're looking for me?" Percy asked quietly. "Back at camp, almost certainly," Suzaku replied. "Those who care for you would not easily abandon hope." Percy's thoughts drifted to Annabeth, to Grover, to his mother. How much time had passed in his world? Did it flow differently there? Or had they been searching for him for the same 2 weeks he'd been in Konoha? "Percy-san," a voice called from behind him. Percy turned to find Sakura approaching, slightly out of breath from the climb. "The Hokage sent me to find you. There's a meeting about tomorrow's tournament security." The revelation of Percy's Phoenix contract and the incident with his alternate reality doppelganger had raised concerns about potential disruptions to the final stage of the exams. With dignitaries from multiple nations scheduled to attend, security was being taken extremely seriously. "I'll be right there," Percy assured her. As they made their way down from the monument, Sakura glanced curiously at Suzaku. "Is it true what they say? That you can travel back to your world now?" Percy nodded. "Apparently. Though I haven't tried it yet. Will you come back to visit?" There was a hint of sadness in her voice that caught Percy off guard. In the short time he'd been in Konoha, he'd formed genuine connections with Team 7 and others. "Of course," he said without hesitation. "I might be from another world, but I've made friends here." "Real friends." Sakura smiled, seeming relieved. "Good. Naruto would never forgive you if you disappeared forever. He's already planning all the ramen shops he wants to take you to after he becomes a Chunin." Percy laughed. "His confidence never wavers, does it?" "Never," Sakura agreed fondly. "Though he's up against some tough competition. Sasuke, Neji, Gaara." At the mention of Gaara, Percy sobered. The Sand Ninja had advanced to the finals after a disturbing match that had left his opponent severely injured. There was something deeply unsettling about Gaara that resonated with Percy's instincts for detecting monsters and threats. Has Gaara been causing any more trouble? He asked as they descended the stone steps. Sakura shook her head. No, but he keeps to himself. His siblings seem afraid of him, which isn't exactly reassuring. They reached the base of the monument and continued toward the Hokage Tower. The streets were bustling with visitors for the tournament, creating an atmosphere of excitement mixed with tension. Extra security was visible everywhere, Anbu in shadow positions, Chunin casually patrolling, even Genin running courier missions with heightened alertness. The Hokage's office was crowded when they arrived. The village's senior Chunin were present, along with the exam proctors and several Anbu commanders. Jiraiya stood near the window, arms crossed, his usually jovial expression replaced with serious focus. "Ah, Percy," the Hokage greeted him. "Thank you for joining us. We were just discussing the security arrangements for tomorrow's tournament." Percy took his place beside Kakashi, who acknowledged him with a nod. Suzaku remained on his shoulder, drawing curious glances from some of the assembled ninja. "As I was saying," the Hokage continued, "while the incident in the Forest of Death appears to have been resolved, we cannot discount the possibility of further disruptions. The Phoenix contract's emergence and Percy's role as a dimensional crosser may have attracted unwanted attention. My sources report unusual movement from several quarters," Jiraiya added. "The Sound Village, in particular, has been suspiciously quiet since their Genin team was eliminated in the preliminaries. And there's still the matter of the Rain team's initial accusations against Percy," Genma pointed out. "Though they've since withdrawn those claims after the truth about the Herald was revealed." The Hokage nodded gravely. "Indeed. Which brings us to your role tomorrow, Percy. As both an observer and now a contracted summoner with unique abilities, your presence at the tournament serves multiple purposes." "You want me to help with security," Percy guessed. In a manner of speaking, the Hokage confirmed. "Your water and fire abilities, combined with your outsider's perspective, make you ideally suited to notice things our own shinobi might overlook. And," he added with a slight smile, "your status as the first Phoenix summoner in generations carries diplomatic weight with our visiting dignitaries." Quote, Percy understood the subtext. He was to be both a security asset and a show of Konoha's strength, proof that the village had powerful and unusual allies. "I'll do whatever I can to help," he assured them, "though I should mention that I'm planning to return to my world soon. After the tournament, if possible." This announcement caused a stir among those who hadn't already heard. The Hokage, however, seemed unsurprised. "A natural desire," the elderly leader acknowledged. "And one we have anticipated. Before you leave, however, there are matters of the contract to finalize. The Phoenix clan's connection to our world through you creates certain responsibilities. The clan requires a physical anchor in this dimension," Suzaku explained, her tall voice projecting to everyone present. "Traditionally, this would be the contract scroll itself, secured in a location of power and significance." Jiraiya stepped forward. "We've prepared a special vault beneath this tower, with seals designed specifically for interdimensional artifacts. The contract will be secure there, yet accessible should you return and need to use it." Percy nodded, grateful for their thoroughness. "And my ability to travel between worlds. How exactly does that work?" All eyes turned to Suzaku, who rustled her wings slightly before answering. "The Phoenix clan exists partially outside normal dimensional boundaries. Through our connection, you can access pathways between worlds that others cannot perceive. It requires focus, intent, and a specific technique we will teach you when the time comes. So I could potentially go back and forth," Percy clarified, "visit home, then return here if needed." "Precisely," Suzaku confirmed, "though each crossing requires significant energy and cannot be performed in rapid succession. There must be a recovery period between journeys." The Hokage cleared his throat. "Which brings us to another matter. Your unique street status as a dimensional traveler raises questions about your standing in our world. After consultation with the village council, I would like to offer you a formal position as Konoha's interdimensional liaison." Percy blinked in surprise. "Liaison? Like a diplomat?" "In essence, yes," the Hokage said. "You would have official standing within our village structure, rights to return and reside here when necessary, and a direct line of communication with village leadership. In exchange, you would serve as our primary contact with both the Phoenix clan and, potentially, your own world. It was more than Percy had expected. A formal acknowledgement of his connection to Konoha and a place for him here, should he choose to return. I'm honored, he said finally. But my primary obligations still to Camp Half-Blood in my world. There are threats there that need my attention. Understood, the Hokage assured him. This arrangement would accommodate your existing responsibilities. We ask only that you maintain the connection between our worlds and alert us to any interdimensional threats that might affect both sides. Percy glanced at Kakashi and Jiraiya, whose expressions suggested they supported the proposal. After a moment's consideration, he nodded. Then I accept, with the understanding that my time here will be limited by my duties back home. Excellent, the Hokage said, looking pleased. We'll formalize the arrangement after tomorrow's tournament. Now, let's return to the security details. The meeting continued for another hour, with Percy providing input based on his experiences with the Herald and the Phoenix contract. When they finally adjourned, night had fallen over Konoha, the streets illuminated by lanterns as visitors and locals alike celebrated the eve of the tournament finals. Kakashi accompanied Percy part of the way back to his temporary quarters. The position of interdimensional liaison suits you, the Chunin commented. Though I there's more to it than simple diplomacy. Percy raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? The Herald may have been sent back to his dimension, but the fact that he could cross over at all suggests weaknesses in the barriers between worlds. Kakashi's single visible eye fixed on Percy with uncharacteristic seriousness. The Hokage is preparing for the possibility of future incursions. By keeping me connected to this world, Percy concluded, as an early warning system. Kakashi nodded, and potentially as a first line of defense. Your combined abilities with water and the Phoenix fire make you uniquely suited to combat threats from beyond normal dimensional boundaries. Percy absorbed this, understanding the responsibility it entailed. I never thought being accidentally pushed rough a portal would lead to becoming an interdimensional guardian. Life seldom follows the paths we expect, Kakashi said philosophically. Especially for those with unusual destinies. They head a crossroads where their paths would diverge. Kakashi was heading to a final strategy session with the other Chunin instructors whose students had reached the finals. Get some rest, the silver-haired ninja advised. Tomorrow will be eventful, one way or another. As Kakashi disappeared in his customary swirl of leaves, Percy continued toward his apartment, Suzaku still perched comfortably on his shoulder. He's right, you know. The Phoenix commented. About your role as a guardian between worlds. It's part of why the Phoenix King chose you for the contract. I figured as much, Percy sighed. It seems like every time I turn around, I'm being handed another world-saving responsibility. Suzaku's mental tone was sympathetic but firm. Such is the burden of those with the power to make a difference. Would you truly prefer to be powerless? No, Percy admitted after a moment's reflection. But sometimes I wonder what a normal life would be like. Normal is relative, Suzaku pointed out. To the phoenixes, soaring through skies of fire is normal. To the shinobi of this world, walking on water using chakra is normal. Your normal has simply expanded to include more possibilities than most. Percy smiled at her philosophical perspective. When did you get so wise? I'm over 200 of your years old, Suzaku replied with a hint of amusement. Though considered quite young among my kind. They had reached his apartment building when Percy noticed something odd. A small, origami crane sitting on the railing outside his door. As he approached, the paper bird animated, fluttering up to land on his outstretched hand. A message jutsu, Suzaku observed. Someone wishes to speak with you privately. Percy carefully unfolded the crane to reveal a message written in elegant script. The convergence affects more than just your doppelganger. Others have crossed. Meet at the old training ground behind the academy. Come alone if you wish to learn the truth about the dimensional barriers. There was no signature, but the bottom of the note bore a small symbol, a spiral with a flame at its center. This could be a trap, Suzaku warned. Percy refolded the note thoughtfully. Maybe, but it might also be someone with genuine information. The symbol at the bottom, does it mean anything to you? Suzaku was silent for a moment, examining the mark through Percy's memories. It resembles an ancient variation of the Phoenix clan's crest, one not commonly known in this world. Few would have access to that knowledge. So whoever sent this has a connection to the Phoenix clan, Percy concluded. Or at least knows more about them than most people here. What will you do? Suzaku asked. Percy considered his options. Going alone to a mysterious meeting the night before a potentially dangerous tournament wasn't the smartest move. On the other hand, if someone had information about other dimensional crossers, it could be crucial for both Konoha's secure it. Why in his understanding of the situation? We'll go, he decided finally. But we'll be careful, and you'll be with me, so I'm not technically alone. Suzaku rustled her feathers in what Percy had come to recognize as approval. A reasonable compromise. And should there be danger, between your water abilities, the Phoenix Flame, and your sword, we are formidable opponents. After collecting Rip, Tide and changing into the more practical ninja attire Kakashi had provided him, dark pants, a fitted long-sleeved shirt, and a lightweight vest with multiple pockets, Percy set out for the meeting place. The old training ground behind the academy was rarely used these days, according to Sakura. Newer, better-equipped areas had been established around the village, leaving this one somewhat forgotten and overgrown. As Percy approached through the shadows, he extended his senses, feeling for water sources he could use if necessary. There was a small pond nearby and plenty of moisture in the grove. And air, more than enough for his purposes if this turned hostile. The clearing appeared empty at first glance, bathed in moonlight that cast long shadows from the surrounding trees. Percy moved cautiously forward, Riptide in pen form gripped loosely in his hand, ready to be deployed instantly. You came, a voice spoke from the shadows. I wasn't certain you would. A figure stepped into the moonlight, a woman Percy had never seen before. She appeared to be in her early 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical style and eyes that gleamed with an inner light reminiscent of the Phoenix fire. Her clothing was simple but well made, in a style that didn't quite match Konoha's fashion. Who are you? Percy asked, remaining at a cautious distance. The woman smiled slightly. Someone like you, a traveler between worlds, though my journey was less dramatic than yours. Suzaku stirred on Percy's shoulder, her mental voice cautious but curious. She carries the echo of the Phoenix Flame, but it's faint, distant. Like an inherited memory rather than a direct connection. The woman's eyes fixed on Suzaku with evident interest. A true phoenix, bonded directly to you. Remarkable. In my world, they are mere legends, echoes of a covenant long broken. Your world, Percy repeated. You're from another dimension too. Not mine or this one. She nodded. There are many worlds, Percy Jackson. More than most can comprehend. Some closely aligned, sharing similar histories and peoples. Others wildly divergent, with different natural laws and evolutionary paths. How do you know my name? Percy asked, grip tightening on Riptide. And why contact me now, right before the tournament? I know your name because I've been watching you since you arrived in this dimension. As for why now, she gestured around them. The tournament tomorrow will draw attention from across this world. Better to speak privately before those eyes arrive. Percy studied her carefully, trying to determine if she posed a threat. There was something familiar about her, though he couldn't place it, a resonance that reminded him vaguely of Camp Half-Blood. You still haven't told me who you are, he pointed out. My apologies. Names have power, especially for those who walk between worlds. She bowed slightly. You may call me Keita. In my dimension, I was, a scholar of the Phoenix clan's history and their connection to the multiverse. Percy caught the past tense. Keita's expression darkened. My world fell to darkness 20 years ago. I escaped through a dimensional rift, one of the few survivors. I've been living in this world ever since, monitoring the barriers between dimensions and helping maintain their stability. And you're telling me this now because when you formed your contract with the Phoenix clan, you sent ripples across the dimensional boundaries, Keita explained. Ripples that are still expanding. The Herald, your doppelganger, was merely the first to notice and exploit them. Others will follow. Percy exchanged a glance with Suzaku, who seemed to be assessing Keita's claims. The Hokage mentioned something similar. That's partly why he offered me the liaison position. Keita nodded approval. A wise move. But there's more you should know before returning to your world. The dimensional barriers aren't just weakening here and in your reality. The disturbance is spreading across multiple worlds, creating a cascade effect. Like dominoes falling, Percy suggested, beginning to grasp the scale of the problem. Precisely. And some of those worlds contain threats far worse than your herald. Entities that would see the multiverse reshaped to their design, or destroyed out of nihilistic spite. Percy thought of Kronos, of Gaia, of the various world-ending threats he'd faced in his own reality. The idea of such powers gaining access to multiple dimensions was deeply troubling. So what's your suggestion? He asked. How do we strengthen the barriers? Kata approached slowly, her movements deliberate and non-threatening. The Phoenix contract you've established is actually part of the solution. In ancient times, the Phoenix clan served as guardians of dimensional integrity, their flame a force that could seal breaches and stabilize weakened barriers. They never mentioned that to me, Percy noted, glancing at Suzaku. Because the knowledge was lost to most of them as well, Kata explained. After the last great dimensional war, the Phoenix King divided his consciousness across multiple realities, entrusting different aspects of his power and knowledge to different branches of the clan. Suzaku's mental voice held surprise. This aligns with certain restricted memories I've accessed since our bonding. Fragments of history considered too sensitive for most summoners to know. Kata nodded as if she'd heard Suzaku as well. The Phoenix you've bonded with is young, but as your connection deepens, more of this knowledge will become accessible to both of you. She reached into a pocket and withdrew a small crystal that glowed with an inner fire. This contains techniques forgotten by most of the clan, methods to detect dimensional weaknesses and seal them using the combined power of your water affinity and the Phoenix flame. Percy regarded the crystal warily. And you're just giving this to me? Why? Because tomorrow's tournament will attract attention from beyond this dimension, Kata said gravely. I've detected multiple fluctuations in the barriers surrounding Konoha, attempts at breaching from outside. Someone or something knows about your contract and wants to intervene before you fully master it. The herald mentioned a Phoenix King, Percy recalled. Said something about being his messenger. Kata's expression hardened. Not the true Phoenix King. An imposter, a being that has absorbed fragments of Phoenix power and styles itself as royalty. In some dimensions, it has succeeded in corrupting entire branches of the Phoenix clan, turning their purifying flame into a tool of conquest. The pieces were starting to connect in Percy's mind. And you think his false king will try something during the tournament tomorrow? I'm almost certain of it, Kata confirmed. The convergence of political power, the presence of you in your newly formed contract. The already weakened dimensional barriers around Konoha, it's an opportunity too valuable to ignore. She held out the crystal again. This will help you recognize the signs of dimensional breaching and give you tools to counter it. I've spent decades refining these techniques. Percy hesitated only briefly before accepting the crystal. As his fingers closed around it, he felt a warm pulse of energy that resonated with both his water affinity and the Phoenix fire within him. How do I use it? He asked. Hold it while channeling both aspects of your power, Kata instructed. The knowledge, will transfer directly to you and your Phoenix partner. But be warned, it will take time to fully integrate. Start tonight, and by tomorrow you should have access to the basic techniques. Percy PPED the crystal into one of his vest pockets. You're taking a big risk, approaching me like this. How do I know I can trust you? Kata smiled sadly. You don't. Trust must be earned. But consider this, if I meant you harm. There are far easier ways than gifting you with additional power and warning you of danger. She had a point. Still, Percy remained cautious. Will you be at the tournament tomorrow? In a manner of speaking. She replied cryptically. I avoid drawing attention to myself, but I'll be watching. And if the barriers begin to fail, you'll know where to find me. With that, she stepped backward into the shadows. Percy expected her to simply walk away, but instead, her form seemed to waver and then fade, as if she'd stepped through an invisible doorway. That was different, he muttered to Suzaku once they were alone. Indeed, the Phoenix agreed. Her ability to fade between dimensional layers suggests considerable experience and skill. Few can traverse the boundaries so effortlessly. Percy pulled out the crystal, examining it in the moonlight. It pulsed with inner fire, like a tiny heart of molten glass. What do you make of her story? And this? Suzaku considered carefully. The crystal contains genuine phoenix energy, I can sense that much. As for her story, hearts align with restricted memories have begun to access. The idea of a false phoenix incorrupting branches of the clan in other dimensions is disturbing but not implausible. So we use the crystal. Cautiously, Suzaku advised. But yes, if there truly will be dimensional incursions during the tournament, we would be foolish to ignore potential tools against them. Percy nodded, tucking the crystal away again. Let's get back. We'll need rest if we're going to master any new techniques before tomorrow. As they made their way back through the sleeping village, Percy couldn't help noticing the increased security, ambush shadows moving across rooftops, patrols at every major intersection. Sensors being placed at strategic points. Konoha was preparing for something, even if they didn't know exactly what was coming. In his apartment, Percy sat cross-legged on the floor with the crystal cup in his hands. Following Kata's instructions, he channeled both his water affinity and the phoenix fire, feeling the contrasting energies swirl and merge within him. The crystal grew warm, then hot. Though it didn't burn, images and concepts began flooding his mind. Techniques for sensing dimensional disruptions, methods to strengthen weakened barriers, ways to combine water and fire that created a unique energy capable of sealing interdimensional breaches. Suzaku perched before him, her eyes closed in concentration as she received the same knowledge transfer. Together, they absorbed what the crystal offered, practicing the basic techniques until exhaustion finally claimed them in the early hours of the morning. Percy's last thought before sleep overtook him was a determination to be ready for whatever tomorrow might bring, and a quiet hope that soon, very soon, he would see the shores of Long Island Sound and the familiar cabins of Camp Half-Blood once again. The arena was packed. Thousands of spectators filled the stands, from common citizens to wealthy merchants to feudal lords and their entourages. In a special section sat the visiting cage, the cage. From the sand village resplendent in formal robes and the traditional hat that partially concealed his features. Percy stood on the observation balcony reserved for special guests and officials, Suzaku perched on his shoulder as always. He wore a formal outfit provided by the Hokage for the occasion, traditional in style but modified to accommodate his fighting abilities if needed, with the Simbo L of Konoha on one shoulder and a newly designed emblem representing his liaison status on the other. From this vantage point, he could see the entire arena floor where the tournament matches would take place, as well as most of the spectator sections. More importantly, he could sense the water sources built into the arena, pipes running beneath the ground, a reservoir for emergency use, even the moisture in the air that felt unusually heavy today, as if a storm were approaching. Nervous? Kakashi asked, appearing beside him with his customary silence. Not about the tournament, Percy replied honestly. I'm more concerned about what might happen during it. Kakashi's visible eye studied him curiously. Did something occur that you haven't reported? Percy hesitated, unsure whether to mention his meeting with Kata. Before he could decide, the Hokage arrived on the balcony, accompanied by Jiraiya and several Anbu guards. Ah, Percy, the Hokage greeted him warmly. Ready for your official duties today? As ready as I'll ever be, Percy answered, bowing slightly as he'd been taught was appropriate. The Hokage nodded approval. Excellent. The cage has expressed particular interest in meeting you. Your unique status has caused quite a stir among our allies and others. The subtle emphasis on others wasn't lost on Percy. Politics in the ninja world were complicated, with alliances often balanced on knife edges. I'll be diplomatic, he promised. See that you are, the Hokage said, though his eyes twinkled with good humor. Now, I believe the first match is about to begin. Sasuke Uchiha versus Gaara of the Desert. Quite the opening spectacle. Percy moved to the balcony's edge, watching as the two competitors entered the arena below. Sasuke looked confident, his movements precise and controlled. Gaara, by contrast, seemed almost detached, as if the proceedings were beneath his notice. Gaara concerns me, Percy admitted quietly to Kakashi. There's something about him that feels wrong. Kakashi nodded slightly. Your instincts are good. Gaara is what we call a Jinchuriki, a human vessel containing a tailed beast. In his case, the one tail, Shukaku. A tailed beast, Percy repeated, the term unfamiliar. Ancient creatures of immense chakra, Kakashi explained. 9 exist in our world, each sealed within a human host to harness and control their power. Percy thought of the strange energy he'd sensed from Gaara during their first meeting, how the Sand Ninja had mentioned a mother, who found Percy's chakra confusing. So he has a monster sealed inside him. Percy summarized. Like a living prison. Exactly. Though each village handles their Jinchuriki differently. From what we understand, Gaara's seal is imperfect. The boundary between host and beast is blurred, leading to mental instability and bloodlust. Percy watched with new understanding as the match began below. Sasuke moved with impressive speed, but Gaara's sand responded automatically to protect him, forming shields and barriers without the redhead seeming to consciously direct it. As the battle intensified, Percy became aware of something odd, a subtle distortion in the air around the arena, visible only when he channeled the techniques he'd learned from Kata's crystal. To normal perception, nothing appeared amiss, but through his enhanced senses, Percy could see hairline fractures forming in the dimensional fabric, like cracks in a windshield spreading outward from multiple points. Something's wrong, he murmured to Suzaku. The barriers are weakening. The Phoenix's mental voice was tense. Yes, multiple breach points forming, but slowly, subtly, a coordinated effort to avoid detection. Percy scanned the arena, looking for the source of the disruption. His gaze fell on several points. A group of sand ninja in one section of the stands, a cluster of seemingly ordinary merchants in another, and, most disturbingly, the cage himself, whose chakra seemed to ripple strangely when viewed through Percy's dimensional awareness. We need to alert the Hokage, Percy decided, turning back toward where the elderly leader stood conversing with Jiraiya. Before he could speak, a tremendous explosion rocked the far side of the village, visible as a plume of smoke rising beyond the arena walls. Instantly, the ninja in the stands were on alert, many rising to defensive positions. It begins, Suzaku whispered in Percy's mind. Below, the match had frozen, with both Sasuke and Gaara looking toward the explosion. Then everything happened at once. More explosions erupted throughout the village, a genjutsu swept through the arena, causing many spectators to fall unconscious, and the dimensional fractures Percy had been monitoring suddenly widened dramatically. We're under attack, Kakashi called out, already moving to intercept several sand ninja who had launched themselves toward the Hokage. Percy drew Riptide, the blade, springing to full size with its flame patterns blazing. At the same moment, Suzaku took flight, growing to her larger battle form in a burst of fire that caused nearby Anbu to step back in surprise. The village is being invaded, Jiraiya reported grimly, appearing beside them after dispatching several attackers. Sand and Sound Ninja, working together. And something else. Something's happening with Gaara. Percy looked down to see Gaara clutching his head in apparent agony, his sand swirling violently around him. Sasuke had backed away, clearly uncertain how to proceed as his opponent underwent some kind of transformation. The dimensional breaches, Percy warned. They're not just happening here. I can sense them forming throughout the village. The Hokage's eyes narrowed, an invisio, coordinated with interdimensional incursions. This is worse than we anticipated. Jiraiya, organize the defense of the civilian sectors. Kakashi, coordinate with the Anbu to secure the arena perimeter. And me, Percy asked, already knowing the answer. The dimensional breaches are your priority, the Hokage confirmed. As our liaison and the Phoenix Summoner, you're best equipped to address that aspect of the attack. A tremendous crashing sound drew their attention back to the arena floor. Gaara's transformation was accelerating, sand pouring out of his gourd and reshaping his body into something monstrous. Sasuke had retreated to the arena wall, clearly recognizing that the match had become something far more dangerous. Gaara's losing control of the One Tail, Kakashi said urgently. If he fully transforms here, surrounded by civilians, the implications were clear. Thousands could die in the resulting rampage. I'll handle Gaara, Percy decided. His sand techniques are water-based at their core, minerals suspended in water. I might be able to disrupt them. Too dangerous, the Hokage began, but was interrupted by a sudden movement from the cage, who lunged forward with unexpected speed, grabbing the older man and leaping to the arena roof. Lord Hokage, Kakashi shouted, moving to pursue, but was cut off by a barrier that sprang up around the two cage. That's not the real cage, Jiraiya said grimly. The chakra signature is all wrong. I suspect it's Orochimaru in disguise. Percy had heard about Orochimaru, a former Konoha ninja turned rogue, one of the legendary Sannin like Jiraiya. But twisted by ambition and forbidden experiments. Go, Jiraiya urged Percy. Stop Gaara's transformation if you can. I'll try to break through that barrier and help the Hokage. With a nod, Percy vaulted over the balcony railing, Suzaku flying beside him. They landed on the arena floor just as Gaara's transformation reached a critical point, his right side. Now completely covered in sand shaped like a monstrous raccoon-like creature with blue veins running throughout. Percy, Sasuke called out, his Sharingan active and a technique like lightning crackling around his hand. What's happening? Quote, invasion, Percy replied tersely. And Gaara's turning into the one tail. Sasuke's eyes widened slightly. You know about the tailed beasts. Enough to know we need to stop this transformation now. Percy stepped forward, channeling both his water affinity and the phoenix flame into Riptide. The blade glowed with power, steam rising from its edge. Get the other genin to safety if you can. This could get messy. Sasuke hesitated only briefly before nodding and leaping away, presumably to find Naruto and Sakura. Percy faced Gaara, who was now hunched over, growling as sand continued to envelop him. Gaara, you need to regain control. The sand ninja's head snapped up, revealing one normal human eye and one transformed into the yellow iris of the one tail. Mother wants your blood, he snarled. She says you taste of salt and foreign power. Your mother isn't speaking to you. Percy tried reasoning, though he suspected it was futile. It's Shukaku, the one tail. You're being manipulated. Gaara laughed, a chilling sound that mixed his human voice with a deeper, more bestial tone. Mother protects me. Mother loves only me. And mother says you must die. Sand shot forward in massive tendrils, far larger and faster than anything Gaara had used in his match against Sasuke. Percy rolled sideways, simultaneously calling to the water pipes beneath the arena. With a groaning sound, the pipes burst, water erupting through cracks in the ground. Percy directed the water into Gaara's sand attack, saturating it and making it too heavy to maintain its shape. The tendrils collapsed into muddy heaps, causing Gaara to roar in frustration. What are you doing? He snarled, his partly transformed face contorting with rage. Mother's sand. You're defiling Mother's sand. It's just water, Percy called back, circling cautiously. Water counters sand. Basic chemistry. Suzaku soared overhead, her fiery form casting a flickering light across the arena. Percy, the dimensional breaches are widening. I can sense at least 3 major incursions forming around the village. Percy nodded, aware of the fractures he could perceive in the air around them. One particularly large breach was forming directly above the arena, like a tear in reality slowly widening. Gaara was struggling to gather more sand, but Percy kept it saturated with water, limiting the Jinchuriki's options. This seemed to push Gaara further into rage and desperation. I'll kill you, he screamed, now clutching his head as the transformation accelerated. I'll prove my existence by erasing yours. Quote, the sand covering half his body began to expand rapidly, forming a massive arm that smashed into the arena wall, sending debris flying toward the remaining spectators. Percy deflected what he could with water shields, but it was clear the situation was escalating beyond containment. We need to get him out of the arena, Percy decided, speaking both to Uzaku and to the Anbu who had taken positions around the perimeter. Too many civilians still here. An Anbu with a cat mask appeared beside him. The forest to the west has been cleared. If you can drive him in that direction, it would minimize casualties. Percy nodded, formulating a plan. Combining his water control with the phoenix techniques he'd absorbed from Kata's crystal, he created a series of scalding steam jets that herded Gaara toward a breach in the western arena wall, already damaged from the initial explosions. Gaara, still transforming and clearly losing the internal battle with Shukaku, crashed through the opening and into the forest beyond. Percy followed, Suzaku flying overhead to maintain visual contact. Behind them, the battle for Konoha was fully engaged, ninja fighting across rooftops. Explosions echoing through the streets, civilians being evacuated to shelter areas. And above it all, on the arena roof, a purple barrier contained whatever confrontation was occurring between the Hokage and the fake K's cage. Percy pushed these concerns aside, focusing on the immediate threat. Gaara had reached a clearing in the forest and was undergoing the final stages of his transformation. The humanoid form was almost entirely gone, replaced by a massive tanuki-like creature made of sand, with blue vein-like markings across its body and a single tail thrashing behind it. "Is that the full one tail?" Percy asked Suzaku, who had landed on a nearby branch. "Not yet," she replied. "The transformation is incomplete. The human consciousness still maintains some control, preventing Shukaku from fully materializing. Then we need to reach Gaara himself," Percy concluded, studying the partially transformed beast. Near the forehead, he could just make out a small figure, Gaara's human form, partially embedded in the sand creature's head. "He's the key," the massive sand tanuki roared, the sound shaking the forest around them. "I'm free. Finally free." The voice was different now, deeper, more primal, clearly belonging to Shukaku rather than Gaara. "Not quite," Percy muttered, charging Riptide with both water energy and Phoenix Flame. Suddenly, the dimensional breach Percy had sensed forming over the arena expanded dramatically, tearing open the sky like a zipper being forced apart. Through the opening, Percy glimpsed another world, not his own, but a realm of ash and flame unlike the Phoenix dimension he'd seen briefly during his contract formation. From this tear in reality emerged a figure that made Percy's blood run cold, a being of living aim in the vague shape of a massive bird, but twisted, corrupted, with wings of black fire that seemed to consume light rather than emit it. "The false Phoenix King," Suzaku gasped, her mental voice filled with horror and rage. "He's found a way through." The corrupted Phoenix entity surveyed the battlefield below, its attention fixing first on the massive sand tanuki, then on Percy and Suzaku. When it spoke, its voice resonated not through air but directly into their minds. "The vessel and the traitor," it boomed. "How convenient to find both together." "Traitor?" Percy questioned, glancing at Suzaku. "He speaks of the Phoenix clan that refused his corruption," Suzaku explained quickly. "Those who maintained loyalty to the true Phoenix King and opposed his attempt to conquer the multiverse." The false king descended toward them, the air shimmering with heat around his corrupted form. At the same time, the one tail seemed to recognize the new arrival, its massive sand body turning toward the fiery entity. "Another Godeling comes to play," Shukaku bellowed. "I'll crush you like the rest." The sand beast launched a massive arm toward the false Phoenix King, who simply passed through it, his corrupted flame turning the sand to blackened glass that shattered and fell to the forest floor. "Primitive construct," the false king dismissed Shukaku. "Your chakra beast is nothing compared to interdimensional power." Percy realized the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Shukaku was dangerous enough alone, but the false Phoenix King represented a threat to the entire multiverse if Kata's warnings were accurate. And now they were facing both simultaneously. "Suzaku," Percy called, an idea forming. "The dimensional techniques from the crystal, can we seal that breach he came through?" The Phoenix considered this. "Possibly, but it would require immense power and perfect coordination between our abilities. And we would need to be much closer to the breach itself." Percy looked up at the tear in reality, hanging in the sky above the forest clearing. "Then we go up. But first, we need to deal with Shukaku, or at least hold him off." The sand beast was preparing another attack, gathering a massive ball of condensed chakra in front of its mouth, a tailed beast bomb, according to Suzaku's hastily shared knowledge. Percy reached deep into his power, calling not Zhu Qi to the nearby water sources but to the moisture in the air itself, pulling it together into a massive sphere of swirling liquid above the clearing. As Shukaku launched its attack, Percy brought the water crashing down in a precisely shaped counter-force that intercepted the chakra bomb and forced it off course, detonating harmlessly in the uninhabited forest beyond. The false Phoenix King observed this exchange with apparent interest. "The vessel has skill, perhaps worthy after all." "I'm not a vessel," Percy called up to the corrupted entity. "I'm a summoner of the true Phoenix clan, and I'm sending you back where you came from." The false king's form seemed to pulse with dark amusement. Brave words from one so ignorant. The convergence has begun. The barriers fall across all dimensions. Soon, all worlds will burn in my purifying flame. While this exchange occurred, Shukaku was preparing another attack. Percy split his attention, maintaining awareness of both threats while formulating a strategy. Suzaku. He communicated mentally, a technique they'd practiced. I need a distraction, something big enough to occupy both of them for a few moments. The Phoenix understood immediately. Launching herself skyward, she began a transformation rarely seen outside the Phoenix realm, a rebirth cycle compressed into seconds. Her form erupted into pure flame that expanded outward in a blinding flash, temporarily taking the shape of a phoenix nearly as large as Shukaku himself, though composed entirely of fire rather than physical matter. The display caught both opponents off guard. Shukaku raised its arms defensively, while the false king turned his attention to Suzaku, clearly recognizing the technique for what it was. Percy used this moment to implement the first stage of his plan. Charging Riptide with the combined power of water and Phoenix Flame, he drove the blade into the ground at his feet, channeling energy in a specific pattern learned from Kata's crystal. A seal formation spread outward, symbols glowing with blue-orange light as they etched themselves into the forest floor. First stage set, he murmured to himself, already moving to the next position. Suzaku's distraction was fading, her massive fire form condensing back to normal size as she could not maintain such an energy-intensive manifestation for long. Both Shukaku and the false king were refocusing, looking for Percy. There, the false king bellowed, spotting Percy as he established the second seal point. The vessel attempts a dimensional working. Stop him, Shukaku, perhaps recognizing Percy as the greater immediate threat to its freedom, launched a barrage of sand bullets that tore through the forest with devastating force. Percy dodged, using water-enhanced reflexes and speed. But one projectile grazed his shoulder, tearing through fabric and skin. Ignoring the pain, Percy reached the second position and plunged Riptide into the ground again, establishing another seal point. 2 more to go, and the containment formation would be complete. The false Phoenix King seemed to realize what Percy was attempting. A quadrilateral seal, ambitious, but futile. Your understanding is incomplete. Maybe, Percy called back, already running toward the third position. But I'm a quick study. As he moved, Percy pulled water from the ground and air, forming it into a protective shell around himself. When Shukaku launched another attack, the water hardened instantly into ice, deflecting the sand projectiles before melting back to liquid form. The third seal point was established under heavy fire from both opponents. The false king had begun launching black fire projectiles that burned through everything they touched, leaving smoldering holes in the forest floor. Percy countered with precisely aimed water jets, though each interception created caustic steam that made breathing difficult. Final position, Percy gasped to Suzaku, who was providing aerial cover. Diving at Shukaku's eyes to distract the sand beast. I'll need an elevation boost to reach it. The fourth seal point needed to be directly below the dimensional breach to complete the containment formation. Unfortunately, that position was currently occupied by Shukaku's massive foot. Use me as a springboard, Suzaku suggested, diving toward Percy. Channel the Phoenix Flame through your legs for an enhanced jump. It was a technique they'd practiced only briefly, but they had no choice. As Suzaku swooped low, Percy leapt onto her back, channeling flame energy through his body. The Phoenix beat her wings powerfully, carrying them upward at tremendous speed, then flipped in midair, creating a launching platform for Percy. He jumped, his Phoenix-enhanced leap carrying him impossibly high, directly over Shukaku's head where Gaara's human form remained partially visible, seemingly unconscious. For a split second, Percy locked eyes with Gaara, seeing not the bloodthirsty monster or the vessel of Shukaku, but a lonely, damaged boy not so different from himself. Someone thrust into a role he never asked for, bearing powers he never wanted. Then gravity reasserted itself, and Percy plummeted toward the final seal position, Riptide extended below him like a blazing comet. Stop him, the false Phoenix King commanded, launching a massive blast of black fire. Shukaku, perhaps, influenced by the brief moment of human connection, hesitated just long enough for Percy to slip past its defenses. Riptide pierced the ground at the exact point Percy had calculated, completing the quadrilateral seal formation. Instantly, lines of blue-orange energy shot out from each seal point, connecting in a perfect square that encompassed both Shukaku and the dimensional breach above. Seal of 4 horizons, Percy intoned. The words coming to him from Kata's crystal knowledge. Boundaries restored, dimensions separated, powers contained. The energy lines surged upward, forming a pyramid shape that narrowed at the dimensional breach. The false Phoenix King screeched in rage, attempting to flee back through the opening, but the seal was already affecting the surrounding space, reading a one-way barrier that prevented escape. This is not the end, vessel, the corrupted entity raged. The convergence cannot be stopped. I have agents in all worlds, including your own. Percy ignored the threats, concentrating on maintaining the seal as it began to close the dimensional breach. Within the pyramid, Shukaku was also affected, its massive sand form becoming unstable as the seal suppressed its chakra. What's happening to me? The beast roared, its voice fluctuating between Shukaku's and Gaara's. I won't go back to the darkness. I won't. Percy hadn't anticipated this. Side effect. The seal was forcing Shukaku back into containment within Gaara. While beneficial in one sense, it was clearly causing the boy tremendous pain as his body fought the accelerated resealing process. Hang on, Gaara, Percy called out, though he wasn't sure if the sand ninja could hear him. This will be over soon. The dimensional breach was narrowing rapidly now, the false Phoenix Key. Enji's corrupted form being forced back through the opening. With a final screech of rage that echoed across dimensions, the entity disappeared as the breach sealed itself with an audible snap. Simultaneously, Shukaku's form collapsed entirely, sand falling in a massive heap with Gaara's unconscious human body at its center. The quadrilateral seal formation pulsed once more, ensuring the dimensional stability of the area. Then gradually faded, its purpose fulfilled. Percy dropped to one knee, exhausted from channeling so much power. Suzaku landed beside him, her own energy depleted from the battle. You did it, she said. Her mental voice filled with wonder. A perfect execution of the Seal of Four Horizons. Even master dimensional mages struggle with that technique. Thank Kata's crystal, Percy replied, breathing heavily. I just followed the instructions. No, Suzaku disagreed. The knowledge was provided, but the execution required your unique fusion of water affinity and phoenix flame. Few could have managed it, especially under such pressure. Percy looked toward Gaara's still form, surrounded by rapidly normalizing sand. Is he alive? Yes, Suzaku confirmed after a moment's observation. The seal forced Shukaku back into containment, but Gaara himself is physically intact, merely unconscious from the strain. With the immediate threats neutralized, Percy became aware again of the larger battle raging across Konoha. Explosions still echoed from the village, and the purple barrier on the arena roof remained visible through the trees. We should get back, Percy decided, forcing himself to his feet despite his exhaustion. The village is still under attack. Before they could move, however, a familiar figure emerged from the forest edge, Kata, looking slightly disheveled but otherwise unharmed. Impressive work, she called, approaching cautiously. The Seal of Four Horizons is notoriously difficult to implement in combat conditions. Percy raised Riptide warily, not yet ready to trust completely. Your crystal came in handy. Though a bit more warning about the false Phoenix King would have been nice. Kata nodded, acknowledging the point. I suspected he might attempt a crossing, but not so soon, and not with such power. His agents must have been preparing this incursion for some time, coordinating with the sand and sound invasion as cover. His agents, Percy repeated. He mentioned having them in multiple worlds, including mine. Almost certainly true, Kata confirmed grimly. The false king has been seeding corrupted Phoenix fire across dimensions for centuries, gathering followers and preparing for what he calls the Great Convergence, a forced merger of multiple realities under his rule. Percy exchanged a glance with Suzaku. All the more reason for me to get back to my world soon. If he has agents there. Precisely why I sought you out, Kata agreed. Your world may already be experiencing dimensional disturbances similar to those here. As a Phoenix summoner with connections to both realms, you're ideally positioned to counter such threats. A groan from Gaara interrupted their conversation. The sand ninja was stirring, his body twitching as consciousness returned. Percy approached cautiously, Riptide still drawn. Gaara's eyes fluttered open, revealing normal human irises rather than Shukaku's star-shaped pupils. What happened? Gaara asked, his voice weak and confused. Mother is quiet. I can't hear her screaming anymore. The seal containing Shukaku was reinforced, Percy explained, kneeling beside the boy while maintaining a safe distance. It should be more stable now, less prone to leaking influence into your consciousness. Gaara stared at Percy with a mixture of fear and wonder. You did this. You silenced mother. Shukaku isn't your mother, Gaara, Percy said gently. It's a powerful being sealed inside you, one that's been manipulating you through fear and pain. Your real mother wouldn't want you to suffer like this. Tears formed in Gaara's eyes, perhaps the first he'd shed in years, based on his shocked expression at feeling them run down his cheeks. Who am I without mother's voice? He whispered. What is my purpose if not to kill for her? Percy thought of his own struggles with prophecy and destiny, how he'd fought to define himself beyond he expectations placed on him by gods and fate. That's something you get to decide for yourself, he told Gaara. Being a vessel doesn't define you any more than being a demigod defines me. We're more than the powers we contain. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of several figures, Temari and Kankuro, Gaara's siblings, along with a squad of Konoha Anbu led by Kakashi. Gaara, Temari called, rushing forward but stopping short at the sight of her brother's tear-streaked face. What happened to him? She demanded of Percy. The seal containing Shukaku has been stabilized, Keita answered before Percy could respond. Your brother is experiencing clarity for perhaps the first time since the One Tail was sealed within him. Kakashi stepped forward. Percy, the invasion is being repelled, but the Hokage. He trailed off, his expression grim even behind his mask. Percy felt a chill. What about the Hokage? He's engaged Orochimaru in combat, Kakashi reported. The barrier prevents any intervention. Jiraiya is still attempting to breach it. And the dimensional incursions? Percy asked, looking to Suzaku. The major breach has been sealed, she confirmed. But Severa, smaller ones remain active throughout the village. Nothing on the scale of the false Phoenix King, but concerning nonetheless. Percy made a quick decision. Kakashi, can you handle things here? Gaara is stable for now, and his siblings should take him back to the Sand Village for proper medical attention. Temari looked surprised at this suggestion. You're letting us go, after everything that's happened. Gaara was as much a victim as anyone, Percy pointed out. And something tells me the Sand Village was manipulated into this invasion. Was your father acting strangely before these events? Temari and Kankuro exchanged troubled glances. He wasn't himself, Kankuro admitted. More secretive, isolated. We barely saw him in the weeks leading up to the exams. Because it wasn't him, Kakashi said grimly. The real Kazekage is likely dead, replaced by Orochimaru as part of this plot. This news clearly shocked the Sand siblings, adding another layer to the day's tragedies. Go, Percy urged them. Get Gaara somewhere safe. When he wakes again, he'll need family, not interrogators. After a moment's hesitation and a nod from Kakashi, Temari and Kankuro carefully lifted their brother between them. Before they left, Gaara's eyes fluttered open once more, fixing on Percy. Thank you, he whispered, the words clearly unfamiliar on his lips. For the silence. Then they were gone, disappearing into the forest with a speed that belied their burden. That was compassionate, Keita observed. And politically risky. Percy shrugged. I've been the kid with powers I didn't ask for. Feared by those who didn't understand me. Gaara deserves a chance to find his own path, now that Shukaku's influence is diminished. Kakashi seemed to approve, his visible eye crinkling slightly. So, these remaining dimensional breaches, can you seal them as you did this one? Not alone, Percy admitted. That technique drained most of my energy. But Keita and I together might be able to manage the smaller ones. Keita nodded agreement. I've been tracking 3 significant breaches, one near the eastern gate, one in the market district, and one at the academy. All are still small, but growing. Then let's move, Percy decided. The sooner we seal them, the fewer interdimensional complications we'll have to deal with. As they prepared to return to the village, Percy glanced back at the spot where the massive breach had been. Though sealed, he could still perceive a faint scar in the dimensional fabric, a weakness that might be exploited again under the right circumstances. The false Phoenix King's words echoed in his mind. The convergence cannot be stopped. I have agents in all worlds, including your own. If that was true, Then Percy's return to Camp Half-Blood couldn't come soon enough. Whatever threats were manifesting in his home dimension, his friends would be facing them without understanding their true nature or origin. "Hold on, Annabeth," he murmured to himself as they raced back toward the embattled village. "I'm coming home soon." The aftermath of the invasion was a study in organized chaos. Konoha's ninja forces had successfully repelled the combined sand and sound attack. But at significant cost. Buildings lay in ruins across several districts, wounded filled the hospital beyond capacity, and makeshift medical stations had been established in intact public spaces. Most devastating of all was the loss of the third Hokage. Though he had succeeded in stopping Orochimaru's immediate plans, the elderly leader had been forced to us. A forbidden sealing technique that claimed his own life in the process. Percy had spent the hours following the attack helping seal the remaining dimensional breaches with Kata's assistance. The work was exhausting but necessary, preventing further incursions from the false Phoenix King's forces or other interdimensional threats. Now, as dusk settled over the wounded village, Percy stood in what remained of the Hokage's office. Joined by Jiraiya, Kakashi, and several other senior ninja, Kata had been invited as well, her knowledge of dimensional matters deemed too valuable to ignore despite her mysterious background. "The funeral will be held tomorrow at sunset," Jiraiya informed them, his usually jovial face somber with grief. "All ninja operations except essential security and reconstruction efforts will be suspended for the day of mourning." Percy had only known the third Hokage briefly, but the loss still hit him hard. The elderly leader had shown him kindness and respect, offering him a place in their world despite his unusual origins. "What happens now?" Percy asked. "With the village leadership, I mean. The council will convene to appoint a new Hokage," Kakashi explained. "In the meantime, a temporary command structure has been established." Jiraiya cleared his throat. "Which brings us to the matter at hand. Despite today's losses, we must address the interdimensional situation. Percy, you mentioned needing to return to your world soon." Percy nodded. "If the false Phoenix King has agents in my dimension, I need to warn my people. They won't understand what they're facing without my knowledge of what happened here." "Understandable," Jiraiya agreed. "But there's the matter of your position as our interdimensional liaison. And the Phoenix contract itself." "I haven't forgotten," Percy assured him. "Suzaku has explained how I can travel between dimensions while maintaining my connection to both worlds." The Phoenix, perched on his shoulder as always, nodded confirmation. "The pathways have been prepared. With the knowledge gained from Kata's crystal and the power of the contract, Percy can traverse the dimensional boundaries at will, though not frequently. Each crossing requires significant recovery time. And the contract scroll itself?" Kakashi inquired. "Will remain here, secured in the vault prepared for it," Percy said. "It serves as an anchor in this dimension, allowing me to return when necessary." Jiraiya seemed satisfied with this arrangement. "Then it's settled. After the Hokage's funeral tomorrow, you'll make your journey home. But know that Konoha considers you an ally and friend. Your help during the invasion won't be forgotten." Percy felt a wave of emotion at these words. Despite the brevity of his time here, he had formed real bonds with these people, with Team 7, with Kakashi, even with the gruff Jiraiya. "Thank you," he said sincerely, "for everything you've taught me, and for trusting me when you had every reason not to." Kata stepped forward then. "If I may, there's one more matter to address before Percy returns to his world. The false Phoenix King's threat extends beyond any single dimension. A network of communication between affected worlds would be invaluable. What do you propose?" Jiraiya asked. From her pocket, Kata produced 3 small crystals similar to the one she had given Percy. Though these glowed with a steadier, less intense light. "Communication anchors," she explained. "Linked to similar crystals I've placed in other dimensions where I've identified resistance against the false king's influence. They allow limited message passing between worlds without requiring physical crossing. A dimensional communication network," Kakashi summarized, sounding impressed. "Exactly. With one of these placed here in Konoha, any interdimensional developments could be shared rapidly across multiple worlds, coordinating our resistance efforts." Jiraiya considered the crystals thoughtfully. "And you trust these other dimensions?" "These other allies? I've vetted them carefully over decades," Kata assured him. "Each is committed to maintaining the proper separation and balance between worlds." while standing against the false king's convergence plan. After some further discussion, it was agreed that one crystal would be secured alongside the Phoenix contract, providing Konoha with a direct line of communication to other dimensions should new threats emerge. As the meeting concluded, Percy found himself standing on the balcony overlooking the village, Uzaku on his shoulder and Keita beside him. The setting sun cast long shadows across the damaged buildings, while repair efforts continued below despite the approaching night. "You've accomplished much in your short time here," Keita observed. "More than many native-born ninja achieve in lifetimes." Percy shook his head. "I was just trying to survive and find my way home. I never expected to become a dimensional guardian or phoenix summoner along the way. The most significant journeys rarely follow expected paths," Keita replied with a small smile. "Your experiences here have prepared you for what comes next. The false Phoenix King will not abandon his convergence plan easily." "You mentioned having tracked him across multiple dimensions," Percy said, studying her closely. "How long have you been fighting this battle?" Keita's expression turned distant, her eyes reflecting memories Percy could only imagine. "Longer than I sometimes care to remember. When my world fell to his corrupted flame, I swore to prevent the same fate befalling others. It has been a lonely crusade at times." "Not anymore," Percy told her firmly. "Now you have allies in multiple dimensions, including me. Whatever the false king is planning, he'll face resistance on every front." A genuine smile touched Keita's lips. "Your optimism is refreshing, Percy Jackson. Hold on to it. The road ahead will test even the strongest spirits." They were interrupted by the arrival of Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura, who had been helping with village cleanup efforts. All three looked exhausted but determined. "They are clothes dirty from a day of clearing debris and assisting civilians." "Percy," Naruto called, his usual exuberance somewhat dimmed by the day's events but not extinguished. "We heard you're leaving tomorrow." Percy turned to greet them, feeling a sudden pang at the thought of saying goodbye to these young ninja who had welcomed him into their world so readily. After the Hokage's funeral, he confirmed, "I need to get back to my own dimension, warn my people about what's happening." Sakura stepped forward, offering a small package wrapped in cloth. "We wanted to give you this, so you don't forget us." Percy accepted the gift, unwrapping it carefully to reveal a framed photograph of himself with Team 7, taken during one of their training sessions. In the picture, Naruto was grinning widely, Sakura was smiling politely. Sasuke maintained his usual stoic expression, and Percy looked slightly bewildered but happy. Kakashi stood behind them, his visible eye crinkled in what passed for a smile. "I don't know if this will survive the dimensional crossing," Percy said, genuinely touched by the gesture. "But I'll never forget any of you, photograph or not. You better come back and visit," Naruto insisted. "I still have to show you Ichiraku's special ramen menu. And after I become Hokage, you can tell everyone in your dimension about how awesome I am." Even Sasuke managed a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Try not to get yourself killed in your world, Jackson. You still owe me a rematch for that spar you won with your water tricks." "It wasn't a trick," Percy protested with a grin. "It's called strategy." "Whatever," Sasuke replied, but without malice. Sakura looked at Suzaku curiously. "Will she go with you? Or stay with the contract?" "I will accompany Percy," Suzaku answered directly, surprising Sakura, who still wasn't entirely used to the Phoenix's mental communication. "As his bonded partner, my place is by his side, regardless of which dimension he occupies." Percy realized he'd come to rely on Suzaku's steady presence and wisdom over the past weeks. The thought of facing Camp Half-Blood and explaining his absence without her support was daunting. "Well, we should let you rest," Sakura said, noting Percy's tired expression. "Tomorrow will be difficult for everyone." The three genin said their goodbyes, promising to see Percy at the funeral ceremony the next day. As they left, Keita excused herself as well, mentioning final preparations for the communication crystal installation. Alone with Suzaku on the balcony, Percy watched the last light fade from the sky. Stars appearing one by one above the wounded but resilient village. "Are you ready to go home?" Suzaku asked gently, sensing his mixed emotions. "Yes and no," Percy admitted. "I miss my friends, my family. But leaving here feels like leaving unfinished business behind." The path between worlds remains open to you, Suzaku reminded him. This farewell is not permanent. I know. Percy sighed, thinking of all that awaited him back at Camp Half-Blood. How would he explain his absence? His new abilities, the interdimensional threat they might already be facing. They will believe you, Suzaku assured him, reading his concerns. Your friends have seen much of gods and monsters. Dimensional travelers and corrupted phoenix entities are merely new variations on ancient themes. Percy smiled at her philosophical perspective. When you put it that way, it almost sounds normal. For one with your destiny, normal has always been a relative concept, Suzaku observed with gentle humor. Looking out over Konoha one last time, Percy reflected on how much had changed since his unexpected arrival. He had come as a lost traveler, confused and alone in a strange world. He would leave as a phoenix summoner, an interdimensional liaison, and a defender against threats that spanned multiple realities. Whatever challenges awaited in his home dimension, he would face them with new knowledge, new abilities, and new allies. The false Phoenix King's convergence plan might stretch across countless worlds, but so too would the resistance against it. As Percy turned to head inside for a final night's rest in Konoha, he felt a strange sense of completion. This chapter of his journey was ending, but the story continued, across dimensions, across realities, and across the boundaries of fire and water united. The funeral of the third Hokage was a solemn affair, held as the setting sun cast golden light across the gathered mourners. The entire village seemed to have assembled. From the youngest academy students to the eldest civilians, all dressed in black to honor their fallen leader. Percy stood with the special Chunin and village officials, his own cloth modified to match the mourning attire of Konoha. Suzaku perched on his shoulder, her flames dimmed respectfully for the occasion. One by one, the villagers approached the memorial, each placing a single white flower in tribute. The gesture was simple but powerful, a village united in grief and remembrance. When Percy's turn came, he stepped forward and placed his flower among the others, offering a silent thanks to the leader who had welcomed him despite his strange origins. Afterward, as the ceremony concluded and people began to disperse, Percy found himself surrounded by those who had become important to him during his stay. Team 7, Kakashi, Jiraiya, even Iruka from the academy who had helped with his research in those early days. So this is it, Naruto said, unusually subdued. You're really going? Percy nodded. It's time. But like I promised, I'll be back. This isn't goodbye forever. Sakura hugged him quickly. Be safe, Percy. Whatever you're facing in your world, don't try to handle it alone. Sound advice, Kakashi agreed, stepping forward to shake Percy's hand. Your tendency to charge into danger rivals Naruto's. Perhaps work on that before your next visit. No promises, Percy replied with a small smile. Sasuke approached last, his expression serious. The power you've gained here, use it wisely. Power always has a cost. Coming from Sasuke, whose own pursuit of power was intense and sometimes concerning, the warning carried special weight. Percy nodded acknowledgement, recognizing the genuine concern behind the Uchiha's words. Jiraiya cleared his throat. We should proceed to the sealing vault. The preparations for your crossing have been completed. Their small group made its way to the special vault beneath the Hokage Tower, where the Phoenix contract had been secured. Keita was already there, making final adjustments to the dimensional communication crystal that would be housed alongside the contract. The vault itself was impressive, circular in design, with sealing formulae etched into every surface and special chakra dampening materials lining the walls. At its center stood a pedestal where the Phoenix contract scroll rested, open to display the signatures of past summoners with Percy's blood mark now prominent among them. Beside it, a smaller pedestal held Keita's communication crystal, glowing with a steady blue-orange light that pulsed gently like a heartbeat. Everything is ready, Keita announced as they entered. The contract has been properly secured, and the communication crystal is synchronized with its counterparts in other dimensions, including the one I'll give you to take to your world. Percy approached the contract, feeling the familiar warmth emanating from it, a connection that would remain even across dimensional boundaries. The crossing technique is complex but straightforward, Suzaku explained to the gathered observers. Percy will use his blood to activate the contract's dimensional pathways, while channeling both his water affinity and the Phoenix Flame to create a stable portal. Will it hurt? Naruto asked with characteristic bluntness. Percy smiled. Probably. Most worthwhile things do, at least a little. Jiraiya stepped forward with a small scroll. This contains a formal documentation of your status as Konoha's interdimensional liaison. Signed by myself as acting village leader until a new Hokage is appointed. It includes details of our alliance and the circumstances of the Phoenix contract's discovery. In case anyone in your dimension requires official explanation, Kakashi added. Though I imagine your Greek gods might have their own perspective on interdimensional matters. Percy accepted the scroll, tucking it securely into the special pack he'd been given for the journey, designed to protect its contents from the energies of dimensional crossing. Time grows short, Keita warned. The optimal alignment for crossing to your specific dimension will peak in approximately 15 minutes. We should begin the preparations. The others stepped back, forming a circle around the central area where Percy would perform the crossing technique. Suzaku took flight, circling above as Percy drew Riptide and carefully cut his palm, allowing blood to drip onto the contract scroll. With blood freely given, I invoke the pathways between worlds. He intoned, the words coming naturally as if the contract itself were guiding him. Phoenix Flame and Ocean's power, united in purpose and intent. As he spoke, Percy began channeling his dual energies, water spiraling around him in an expanding helix while Phoenix Flame manifested as glowing sigils in the air. The two forces intertwined, creating a swirling vortex of blue and orange energy that gradually took on a structured pattern. The crossing begins, Percy continued, raising Riptide above his head where the blade blazed with combined energy. Dimensions aligned, pathways revealed. The summoner seeks his native shore. The energy vortex intensified, forming a tunnel-like structure that stretched upward and seemingly beyond the physical confines of the vault. Within this tunnel, Percy could glimpse fragmented images, places, people, realities shifting and blurring as the dimensional boundaries thinned. Whoa, Naruto breathed, watching wide-eyed as reality itself seemed to bend around Percy. Suzaku's flight pattern tightened, the phoenix diving to land on Percy's shoulder once more. We must move quickly now, she urged. The pathway is forming, but it will not remain stable for long. Percy turned to face his friends one last time, the vortex swirling around him making his form appear ghostly and indistinct. Thank you, Hikaye. Over the rising sound of dimensional energies. For everything. I'll be back as soon as I can. You better believe it, Naruto shouted back, his usual enthusiasm breaking through the solemnity of the moment. Keita approached the edge of the vortex, careful not to disrupt its structure, and handed Percy a crystal matching the one installed in the vault. For communication, she reminded him. Place it somewhere secure in your world. It will alert you to messages and dimensional disturbances. Percy nodded, securing the crystal in his pack alongside Jiraiya's scroll and the photograph from Team 7. Then, with a deep breath, he raised Riptide one final time. The crossing completes, he declared. Fire and water united, the phoenix guides the way home. With those words, the vortex collapsed inward, enveloping Percy and Suzaku completely. For those watching, it appeared as if they were pulled into a single point that flashed brilliantly before vanishing entirely, leaving behind a faint scent of sea salt and wood smoke. For Percy, the experience was both familiar and entirely new. Unlike his chaotic arrival in the Naruto world, this crossing was structured, controlled, though no less intense. His consciousness stretched and compressed simultaneously, as if being pulled through the eye of an impossibly small needle while expanding to fill an infinite space. Colors, sounds, sensations all blurred together in a torrent of information too vast for his mind to process. He caught glimpses of other worlds, other realities sliding past his awareness, some eerily similar to his own. Others so alien he couldn't begin to comprehend them. Through it all, Suzaku remained a constant presence, her phoenix energy stabilizing him against the dimensional currents that threatened to pull him off course. Together they navigated the pathways between worlds, guided by the contract's ancient power and Percy's innate connection to his home dimension. Then, abruptly, everything shifted. The chaotic stream of sensory input coalesced into a singular direction, a pulling sensation that grew stronger with each moment. Percy felt himself accelerating toward a specific point, a break in the dimensional fabric that resonated with his own native reality. There, Suzaku's mental voice cut through the dimensional noise. Your world's signature is clear. Focus on it, Percy. Focus on home. Percy concentrated on Camp Half-Blood, the strawberry fields, the cabins, the sound of waves breaking on the shore. The image solidified in his mind, creating an anchor point in the dimensional chaos. With a sensation like breaking through a membrane, Percy felt himself snap back into normal space-time. There was a momentary feeling of vertigo, then solid ground beneath his feet and familiar air in his lungs, saltier, cooler than Konoha's. He opened his eyes to find himself standing on Half-Blood Hill, Talia's pine tree looming nearby with the golden fleece glimmering among its branches. The summer evening was warm, stars beginning to appear in a darkening sky that looked exactly as he remembered. We made it, Percy breathed, a wave of emotion washing over him at the sight of home. Suzaku, still perched on his shoulder, surveyed their surroundings with interest. Your world feels different, older somehow, with energies that flow in patterns unlike the chakra of the shinobi world. Percy understood what she meant. After weeks immersed in the Naruto universe, he could sense the distinctive nature of his own reality, the divine power that permeated everything, the ANC. And magic that operated on fundamentally different principles than chakra. Come on, he said, starting down the hill toward the cluster of cabins visible in the distance. Time to find out how long I've been gone. As they approached the central area of camp, Percy noticed several changes that suggested time had indeed passed. New cabins under construction, different arrangements of the training areas. Campers he didn't recognize moving about their evening activities. Then someone spotted him. Percy. A voice called uncertainly, followed by the clatter of something being dropped. Percy turned to see an Ares camper staring at him in shock, a spear forgotten at her feet. Her expression quickly shifted from surprise to excitement. Percy's back, she shouted at the top of her lungs, He announcement carrying across the entire camp. Percy Jackson is back. Suddenly, activities everywhere halted. Heads turned, conversations stopped mid-sentence, and then the camp erupted into Modi. On as campers came running from all directions. The first to reach him was Grover, moving with surprising speed on his goat legs, eyes wide with disbelief. Percy. The satyr bleated, skidding to a halt and nearly bowling him over with an enthusiastic hug. Gods of Olympus, it's really you. Where have you? His sentence cut off as he noticed Suzaku. Is that a phoenix on your shoulder? Before Percy could respond, more campers arrived. The Stoll brothers, Clarice, Katie Gardner, and others, all talking over each other in a cacophony of questions and exclamations. Move. A commanding voice cut through the crowd, which parted instantly to reveal Annabeth Chase, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, her gray eyes stormy with emotion. She stopped a few feet from Percy, studying him, as if she couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. Seaweed brain, she whispered, voice catching. Is it really you? Percy felt his heart constrict at the sight of her. It's me, wise girl, he confirmed softly. I'm back. For a moment, Annabeth remained frozen. Then, with a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob, she launched herself at him, arms wrapping around him so tightly he could hardly breathe. 3 months, she said into his shoulder, voice muffled but unmistakably angry despite her evident relief. You disappeared for 3 months without a word. We thought you were dead, or worse. 3 months, Percy repeated, surprised. It's been about 2 weeks for me. This revelation caused Annabeth to pull back, studying his face with renewed intensity. 2 weeks. Percy, where have you been? Before he could begin to explain, Chiron appeared, his centaur form towering above the gathered campers. His expression showed the same mixture of shock, relief, and wary conk. That seemed to characterize everyone's reaction. Percy, the ancient trainer greeted him, voice carefully controlled. Your return is unexpected, but most welcome. And you appear to have brought a guest. All eyes turned to Suzaku, who had remained calmly perched on Percy's shoulder throughout the commotion. The phoenix met their curious gazes with dignified poise. This is Suzaku, Percy introduced. She's, well, that's part of a very long story. One best told somewhere less crowded, I think, Chiron suggested, noting the growing audience as more campers continued to arrive, drawn by the news of Percy's return. The big house, Annabeth agreed, still keeping a firm grip on Percy's arm as if afraid he might vanish again. And you're going to tell us everything, Percy Jackson. Starting with how you disappeared from your apartment in Manhattan and ending with why you have a mythical fire bird on your shoulder. Percy nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of his interdimensional journey. How could he possibly explain everything that had happened? The shinobi world, chakra, the Phoenix contract, dimensional breaches, the false Phoenix King, it all seemed so far removed. Rom, the familiar world of Greek gods and monsters. I'll try, he promised. But it's complicated. Really, really complicated. When is it ever simple with you? Annabeth replied, but her tone had softened. The initial shock of his return giving way to genuine happiness beneath her exasperation. As they made their way toward the big house, surrounded by curious campers keeping a respectful distance, Percy felt the communication crystal in his pack pulse once, a gentle reminder of his connection to Konoha and the responsibilities that came with it. He was home, but his journey was far from over. The false Phoenix King's threat loomed across dimensions, and Camp Half-Blood would need to prepare for dangers unlike any they had faced before. But looking at the familiar faces around him, Annabeth, Grover, Chiron, his fellow campers, Percy felt a surge of confidence. If anyone could handle interdimensional threats and corrupted Phoenix entities, it was the demigods of Camp Half-Blood. With Riptide at his side, Suzaku on his shoulder, and his friends around him, Percy Jackson was ready for whatever came next, in this dimension or any other. So, he began as they settled into the big house's main room. A dozen eager faces turned toward him. It all started when this fire-bird-woman hybrid attacked me in Central Park. In the shadows of the woods beyond Camp Half-Blood, unnoticed. Amidst the excitement of Percy's return, a small flame flickered into existence. Unlike the warm orange gold of Suzaku's fire, this flame burned black at its core, with edges of sickly purple. It hovered momentarily, as if observing the camp from a distance, then expanded briefly to reveal a pair of eyes, ancient, malevolent, patient. The vessel returns, a voice whispered, audible to no mortal ears. The convergence continues. Dimensions align. Soon, all worlds will burn in my purifying flame. The corrupted fire flickered once more, then vanished, leaving only a small patch of blackened earth to mark its presence, a silent promise of conflicts yet to come across worlds both known and unknown. Chapter 2 End.